Welcome to Behind the Badge. This podcast aims to improve the health and well-being of frontline workers. Each episode features candid conversations with former and current frontline community members and subject matter experts. Join us as we explore the unique nature of serving in high-risk roles, sharing inspiring stories of resilience, strategies, and resources. We are not qualified health professionals, nor are we aligned with any organization. The opinions expressed in the podcast are solely our own. Additionally, the content may evoke strong emotional responses for some. Listener discretion is advised.
I don't wanna promise that we have an answer, and I don't wanna promise that we know the way. I just wanna bury the guilt of the nature like a tidal wave.
Welcome back to Behind the Badge. I'm Josh.
I'm Jason.
How are you, mate?
Good, buddy. How you going?
Yeah, good. Today we have a veteran of the Australian Army, served in the Royal Australian Armoured Corps.
Yep.
Before transitioning out and joining the Queensland Police Service, and then transitioned out of that due to some mental ill health, and eventually finding some reprieve or improvement through plant medicine.
Yep.
Absolute pleasure to introduce Jeff Casson.
Yeah,
How are you,
thanks
mate?
for having us on, gents.
No dramas.
Good to be here.
Pleasure's all ours. So, mate, to kick this off today, we might go back to the start of your timeline, if that's all right. Get a bit of context and learn a bit about you and perhaps where you grew up and how your childhood was.
Yep. So I had a bit of a different childhood in that I grew up in the army system. So mum fell pregnant, dad joined the army to support a family. That was childhood growing up. Lots of moving around, lots of different schools. So I did 6 schools in 12 years. So I was fortunate enough to do all 5 of my high schooling here in Brizzy though. So that was really good. Positive and negatives to growing up into the defence world. Obviously, the moving, losing your mates every sort of 2 to 4 years isn't ideal. But we saw a lot of the country at the same time. So there's a lot of familiarity. You see a lot of the country, and we've got a pretty awesome country to go and see and explore, especially as a kid. So some of the places we went to, like Northern Territory, was awesome, but the bases and that sort of stuff, things I grew up around that was seemingly normal for me, I didn't find out were abnormal for everybody else until later in life. So, it's Christmas time now here, and I've sold this before, but going to Dad's Christmas party at work was significantly different to the stories I was hearing from my friends' parents' Christmas parties. So, their Christmas parties did involve firing blank ammunition through machine guns. So...
Sounds like a good Christmas to me.
Yeah, and like really cheap beers and that sort of shit. So, but it was awesome. I drunk the Kool-Aid really early and decided very early on that I was only ever going to join the army, and that's the only thing I ever wanted to do. So that kind of dictated my schooling and that sort of stuff, especially in high school. Not that I was ever academically inclined. I just did what I had to do to join the army. Not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, I just knew I wanted to join army. Thought it was just the bee's knees, the life. And by the time I went to enlist, the global war on terrorism had happened. 9/11 happened when I was in grade 10. And I think I remember the morning that happened, going to school and talking to my best mate, who's still one of my best mates now. This is going to change the world. We were both interested in joining the military then. And I said, I think this will have a long-lasting impact on the world. Little did we know then, the global war on terrorism was going to go for 20-odd years. So, yeah, but school was all right. Still got what I needed to get into the army, and got all the things offered to me that I needed to, and got where I wanted to go eventually. But yeah, growing up wasn't the best. I suppose, you're dealing with bullying and that sort of shit. every time you go to a new school, there's the typical new kid treatment. So you learn to fight early and to stand up for yourself early. So things that probably aren't really promoted in the school grounds now. So, but you learn to get along. You learn to make friends, and you learn what people you want to surround yourself with sort of early, and make those. I saw it later as a copper. Some of the really good schools in Brisbane, they've still got ratbag kids. And ratbag kids become ratbag kids because they get caught up with other ratbag kids. You can't control what your kids do at school. So I was really fortunate that the circle of mates that I had, especially through high school, were good people. And a lot of them I still speak to today. But academically, I think at one point I was really interested in becoming a fighter pilot, fast jet pilot for the F-18s, and decided I was going to do that. And then got to recruiting. They're like, you interested in this? That's cool. Where's your physics? Where's your chemistry results? Where's your maths C results? I was like, maths C, mate. Dude, I could barely spell maths A. So, look, I passed and I managed to get in all right. But that recruiting process took 2 years, though. Yeah. When I was 16, I'd damaged my knee playing sport at school, which required an operation. So initially through my recruitment, when I rang up and made all the appointments and had the medicals and everything like that, they said, no, absolutely not. You've got a knee injury, so that's going to exclude you from service forever. Yeah, right. So I took that pretty hard. You imagine growing up, you only ever want to do one thing, and all of a sudden that thing's taken off the table for you and there's no plan B. So I kind of hit the wall there. I was working for a defence contractor at the time, and working on defence vehicles, and so they kind of offered me I think it was a diesel mechanic or diesel fitter apprenticeship as a like a consolation, like, we heard your process with recruiting's fallen through, we'll offer you this. And so I'd started to sort of just about to start that, and I still had that real desire to join Army. So I rang up and I said, is there anything I can do? I said, you can appeal it. So, okay, so I appealed it, and that got shot down real quick. And so, fallen a bit of a slump. I had a girlfriend at the time, and a lot of drinking, a lot of partying. I think I was 18, 19 at the time. And then had a breakup with the girlfriend. I was working this job and I wasn't super happy still. And I rang recruiting back, and then I said, is there anything I can do? Anything, any service, because Dad was sort of telling me, maybe try, Navy or Air Force, because once your foot's in the door, you can sort of slide left or right kind of thing. So I rang him back and I said, look, I've been knocked back on this medical ground for this, and I understand, but is there anything I can do? Like, oh, you have a second appeal. I was like, well, why didn't you tell me this 12 months ago? So I got all these letters together, and went and saw other surgeons and had other assessments done. And I got a pile of documents and gave it all back to recruiting, and I said, what do you think? And then about 2 months later, they called and said, okay, well, we're happy with your appeals and what all these specialists have said. Come on down. So, happy days. Yeah, managed to get me foot in the door.
So through that process, how was Dad, being that he was already in, how did he influence you and your job decisions or job prospects?
Dad was always, he never pushed defence on me. It was never expected I was going to join. I mean, I'd always grew up saying I want to join the Army. It's hard to say that if Dad hadn't been in, would I have joined? I don't know. But that's just the devil on you. So joining, he didn't say one way or another. Like Dad was in transport for 23 years. And, I think one of the options offered to me from recruiting was driver and transport. And I looked at that from a sort of legacy point of view, but at the same time, I wanted to sort of do my own thing in defence. Yep. At the time, Iraq had kicked off, and being an absolute Army tragic, Dad would bring home like the Army newspaper and that sort of stuff. I'd flick through that and have a read. But, I was reading Contact magazine. I was reading the Australian New Zealand Defender magazines when they were really popular. And at the time, because the global war on terror had kicked off, all this content's coming out, and there's these 8-wheeled armoured vehicles kicking around everywhere through Iraq, through Baghdad. We hadn't quite made it into Afghanistan yet, but the writing was on the wall that these things were going to be heavily utilised. So initially, when all the list of jobs came down that I was offered at the time, infantry was on there, combat engineer was on there. I didn't know a lot about that, but that was interesting. Recovery mechanic was in there, but ASLAV crewman was on there as well. So, and as soon as I saw what ASLAV was, and I connected the dots straight away. Oh, they're all over Iraq. They're all over the place. They'd been to East Timor as well. The writing was on the wall to me that these things were going to be heavily utilised. And I talked to Dad. He's like, well, look, you could go infantry if you want, and you could get a deployment. That's pretty likely. But there's lots of infantry battalions with lots of infantry dudes in them. There's only 2 full-time cavalry units with these ASLAV vehicles in them, and they're going to be used. Dad was like, they're probably going to be pretty heavily used and utilised throughout these deployments. And I kind of didn't know much more about it, and I was talking to another mate who put me in touch with someone. He said, what? And I was looking at infantry, typical 18, 19-year-old, I just want to shoot guns and blow stuff up. Let's do. And army, you talk, army, you think of soldiering, you think of an infantryman. And he's like, look, I've been working here in this cavalry unit. Yes, they do a lot of stuff on their vehicles. And he goes, they look awesome when they're shooting and moving and they do that sort of stuff. He goes, but they also do a dismounted reconnaissance scout role. So you'll still get, if you want, you'll still get your fill doing some dismounted work. And we did. As the years went on through my time in Army, there was a training fleet of vehicles that we had that was constantly being shipped between Puckapunyal, Brisbane and Darwin so the regiments could train. So there was this constant deployment or this constant cycle where a squadron or 2 squadrons worth of dudes in a regiment would be either deployed or resting or training. So if a unit just got back, the fleet of vehicles was sent to the other unit. And so everyone would train or rest. And that's how it just was for pretty much my entire 7 years we were in. There were vehicles that were being constantly moved around the bases and the units. And you literally see the same names in the vehicle logs signing up. He only had it, 6 months ago. And then I had it 6 months before that. It was really weird. But cool at the same time. It was a very, very active time. My first week in my regiment after I joined, I went through all my training. A squadron had just gotten back and they were just sending it. They were ramping it up hard in the blocks. But they were telling us all their stories. And I was like, this is awesome. And we're like, okay, so do you think we'll get deployed soon? And everyone's like, mate, it's not a case of if, it's a case of when. Because, I got to my unit 2 Cav, which was based in Darwin at the time, in May of 2006. And by September, the first reconstruction task force was sent to Afghanistan with ASLAV. So all of a sudden, we had 3 full-time cavalry regiments with demands to supply crews to Baghdad for the security detachment in Baghdad. There was the Al-Matana task group that turned into the Overwatch Battle Group West task group down in southern Iraq, and that was a squadron-sized deployment. The deployment in Baghdad was a troop-sized deployment. And then the Afghan deployment turned into a squadron-sized deployment as well. So there was times, and we got out to our regiments, and some guys went to B squadron, some guys went to A squadron, and we almost didn't see those guys again because they'd be deployed and you'd be home or on exercise or on courses or whatever else, and you just like ships in the night kind of thing. It was really weird, but it was a really cool time to be in Army at the same time. A really cool time to be in Army. Very busy. Very, very busy. Even off deployment or rest cycles, when we're training, you'd be going and doing big exercises down in Kultana or you come to Townsville for a massive exercise, and we were still getting around a lot. Especially in the territory with their wet season. As soon as it starts raining, like the ground just turns to clag, and you can't move armoured vehicles. So it becomes really counterproductive to deploy to your local training areas. But yeah, you kick on, and it was just the dream. And like after my first deployment, I remember talking to my troop corporal, and like, what do you think I should do? I'm buying a car. I did, but I've still got about 45 left. Should I invest it? Should I do this? Should I do that? And he's like, mate, look, deployments are coming. More deployments are coming. He goes, have fun.
Yeah.
Enjoy yourself. Travel. Spend it. Spend it on bloody hookers and coke. I don't care. There's going to be more deployments. You'll be right. And it was just like, yeah, I guess there will be. So like, yeah, I bought my SS Commodore after my first deployment, and the rest of it I spent on traveling and enjoyed myself. So
happy days.
It was awesome.
Where was that, and how long were you in the regiment until you did deploy?
So yeah, I got to 2 Cav after all my training. So training goes for about 6 months. So we did about 3 months at Kapuka for your basic training, and then another about 3 a bit months to learn how to drive and operate the vehicles, plus the weapon systems on those vehicles, minus the main armament. That comes as a separate sort of career advancement course later on. Same as your crew commanders and that sort of stuff. But yeah, after about 6 months, I got to Darwin at 2 Cav Regiment in May 2006. And shortly after, we did maybe 2 bush exercises, and then the Overwatch Battle Group West 2 came together, and that was commanded by 2 Cav, I believe. I could be wrong. So I got put on that deployment as a reserve, a standby reserve, me and 3 other guys, and all the reserves got snapped up bar me. So that was a bit rough to sort of I went through all the training and got all the equipment issued and everything like that, and everyone went bar me. So that was like, okay, cool. But I got put straight back into A Squadron and went on Christmas leave, came back in January 2007, and the next battle group came together, and 5 7 RAR were leading that one. And so we came together, went to Coltana for 2 months, and then in June, very early June 2007, went to Iraq for 6 months.
Yeah, nice. So less than 12 months in the unit. And you're off.
Yeah, and there were guys that were on that first deployment. So got to regiment in mid-early 2006 and deployed by December 2006.
Quick turnaround.
Mate, and there were guys on an IET course, an initial employment training course for armoured crewmen. There'd be a bulk, and there'd be a third of us would be ASLAVs. We're going to do the job that I did. A third were going to tank, so they learnt the tank. And at the time, the M113 tracked vehicles, and are very famous from Vietnam and the like. We're going there, and there were guys on our course or the course behind that trained on those 113 variants of vehicles. So went to Townsville. Like a week later, they're in East Timor.
Yeah, right.
So turnaround from training completion to deployment for some guys was super, super quick. Mm-hmm. But that was the nature of Army at the time.
Mm-hmm. And so Overwatch Battle Group in 2007, 6 months. How did that go?
Mate, I really enjoyed it. It was very eye-opening from a lot of perspectives. It's very much a culture shock. You're going to, Iraq is not the same as North Brisbane. There's some subtle differences, but you're learning. I'm a bit of a history nerd, so I learn about the Battle of the 73 Easting and that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden, we're rolling around the same area where these things happened. We're doing big border operations down near Syria. We're doing late night quick reaction force standby tasks at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night into about 2 o'clock in the morning, because Green Berets and ODA are doing hits in the nearby Nasiriyah. It's just a different existence. You're learning about the might of the American military and what they bring to bear. So we lived on the Talil Air Force Base in southern Iraq, and we were based out of there. And they're what they bring when they come when America says we're going to war, like they go to war and they bring the kitchen sink. Like their PX store, which is like a little convenience store kind of thing that sells everything from cans of Coke and chocolate bars and chips to a fridge, freezer, through to GPS, Garmin watches, to ammunition pouches and holsters and all sorts of stuff. It's like if you're a little army gear nerd, like the PX stores are awesome. So, and you buy a flat screen in there, buy a new laptop in there. It's a bit of a weird place. But outside the PX store, they've got, Burger King, they've got Pizza Hut, they've got Taco Bell and this sort of stuff. And it's weird to see that sort of stuff. You're like, I'm in Iraq and I'm just, I'll have a meat lovers with, and I'll have the stuffed crust with the jalapeno cheese and that sort of stuff. And, we weren't eating Australian rations when we went outside the wire. We were eating American MREs. And they would drop them off to us by the pallet, and there was no shortage. So dudes would go and get like a box of MREs and load their vehicles up with like all their favourite meals and just go ditch all like the vegetarian meals and that sort of stuff because they taste like shit. But it was a cool deployment. It really was. We had a lot of indirect fire on the base, and that was the first time we had rounds land really close to our accommodation. Was a bit of an eye-opening experience as to like individual experiences may vary. So they're obviously enablers that don't leave the base, and what they consider high threat and like oh shit kind of moments, and what we considered oh shit kind of moments are very different. We're out there patrolling. Most weeks would have at least a task. It'd be very rare that a couple of days would go by where you weren't on some sort of task outside the wire. And then you've got these people, they're enablers, and they're absolutely vital to the overall mission. They just are. But, we had a 107 rocket land about 30 metres away from the accommodation. It was pretty fucking close. Like, I remember sitting in the room, watching the laptop, and the dust rose out of the keyboard. And I was like, oh, fuck, that was close. And you can smell the cordite from the round and everything like that. And you feel like the shockwave go through your body. And once the all clear goes, you go out and you find the impact point and like, oh, that's pretty cool. And like one of these dudes, and it literally never left the base ever. And he's looking around, he's like, holy shit, this shit just got real. And we're like, okay, nerd. Like, we're driving through, like, there's IEDs out there and shoot through it and everything else. So, we just laughed in this poor guy's face. So, it was cool in its own right. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of places we went, and we did a little bit of mentoring over the Iraqi army, but a lot of Overwatch on like vital points on Route Irish that connects Kuwait to Baghdad, and a lot of protection of like convoys and that sort of stuff. And you go out and you do these Overwatch gigs for like a week. At night, you go out and set up an Overwatch. You put the vehicles in, and you protect the American convoys coming up from these. There'd be overpasses over these massive routes, and you're just basically there to make sure no one's getting on those overpasses and dropping bombs or putting IEDs in and that sort of stuff to ensure safe passage of these vehicle convoys. But during the day, you'd bounce back to the local combat outpost where these Americans live, and these dudes, they're National Guardsmen, and their deployments go for like 18 months. Ooh. And they are in these compounds that are about the size of your average Australian block. There's these concrete compounds, and they get food brought to them. But they've got internet and they've got everything there, and it's like their own little concrete castle just in the middle of this desert. And they've got like 120mm mortars in there and all this sort of stuff. And they come and they go, "You guys want to shoot the mortar?" I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, we don't have 120mm mortars, so yeah, we're shooting the mortars, and then they've got like the big 50 cal rifles and stuff, and like, you want to have a shoot of the rifles? Like, they were just super friendly dudes, and it was really interesting. Like, you get talking to them, and they're like, "Oh, when I get home, I'm going to buy myself a truck." And you're like, "Oh, that's cool. I've saved all my money, and I'm going to put it all in a truck." And hang on, and then you kind of realize how well the Australian Army is paid while you're deployed, and how bad these guys aren't. and like they do 18-month deployments, and they get one block of like R&R that goes for maybe 10 days where they can only go home. Whereas our scheme was like, well, we'll fly you to London, we'll fly you to Rome, we'll fly you home, you know, wherever you want to go. Anyway. Basically, we'll drop you off the local international airport and you just go.
Yep.
Just be back here by this date kind of thing. And you just got like a real like empathy for these dudes. And they're the nicest people. They're just nice people. And it's weird because, you know, Australians interact with each other very differently. You know, very much the black humour kind of thing comes out, and we're not ashamed to throw a few C words around and that sort of stuff. So for the newer guys, the Americans they'd hear us talking to each other like this and go, "Hey, you guys all right? Is everything all right here?" We're like, yeah. He's like, "Oh, I just you called him that used the C word when you were talking to him. I thought there was going to be a fight." I said, "No, he's my bro. Like, it's all
Used
good."
it in a good way.
Yeah,
He's a good seat.
yeah, exactly right. So, but yeah, it was real. It was good. It was a good deployment. You know, we had one decent contact in our Shatra where the boss's car got hit by an RPG shot at it. It's that infamous footage of you see an army PR person was hanging out the back of a Bushmaster by pure chance. So we took the CO of the battle group out to this job. And you can see from the back of the Bushmaster, you know, there's an ASLAV there, and the ASLAV's traversed off down this alleyway. And the snipers take some small arms fire, and it ricochets off the wall, and they jump behind the wall. And the ASLAV, it takes an RPG and hits the bar armor and bounces off. Nothing happens, and then the LAV comes to life and shoots back 6 rounds of HE up the alleyway. It was maybe a 30-meter engagement, so you just know that there's going to be human mince on the other side of that. So. But it was cool. It was cool footage, and it went viral. So, and the troop sort of took the troop I was in. And we're like, "Yep, that was us." We chalked that one up for the battle group.
What was the IED threat like?
Mate, So I remember going through Kuwait, and you're getting like all this IED training, and they're showing you the latest and greatest that the Iraqi militias and then the Iraqi insurgencies were coming up with, and they were daisy chaining IEDs, and they were offsetting them, and they were using infrared beams to initiate things. It was really, really sophisticated. And to counteract that, we had several electronic warfare jamming systems and that sort of stuff to counteract all these things. But the big one were these things that they called a EFP. So it was an explosively formed projectile. So there's a copper disc that's inverted. It kind of looks like a pyramid. And when this thing initiates, that copper disc gets explodes out and turns into a molten metal slug. And these things punched through Abrams tanks. And we're like, wow, if we hit that, like, you know, you may as well, you know, just dig your own grave, you sort of thing, you know, you just kiss yourself goodbye. So, but we were really fortunate that we didn't hit any of those. I think the previous battle group hit a good one on Anzac Day of 2007. And one of the troop sergeants from that engagement even got rounds off with his pistol from the turret. Insurgent vehicle got too close, and he was traversed off complete other way, and just had his 9mm pistol in his chest holster, ripped it out, went to work, and he got 2 on the board.
Gangster.
So good dude too. Like very much a war fighter down to his bones.
So luckily for that trip, none of that sort of IED stuff.
No, I don't even think we have any. I don't recall having any like IED fines during that 6-month deployment. So we were really fortunate. But, you know, we were also used all our countermeasures. We didn't just travel on hard top roads. Like, we used a lot of dirt tracks, back tracks. Like, we were very smart about how we got around. We didn't just use the main supply routes, all the MSRs. So, yeah. Yep. Which I think were Americans, like, they didn't do that as much. Like, if they were going somewhere, they took the fastest route there. And surprise, surprise, they got hit a bunch. So... yeah, I mean, it's probably lazy fighting on behalf of the insurgent just to put it on a road because they know that someone's going to come up that road. But yeah, probably a little bit of lazy soldiering too. But at the same time, like some of those convoys were like 200 or 300 vehicles long. You know, to take them through the desert doesn't really make sense. So yeah, look, they took the hits that they hit. And some dudes got really badly munted out of it, and especially with those EFP IEDs as well. But no, we were super fortunate that none of our call signs, I don't think any of our call signs hit any IEDs during that deployment.
Yeah, nice. So 6 months, was that Christmas time? You were there for Christmas?
Got home just before Christmas.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, I think we got back to Australia 13th, 15th of December or something like that. Yeah, no, it was a good deployment.
Coming home, how did that go? And what sort of, after that period of getting back and settling in, what was on the cards for you after that?
So before we even left Iraq, the officer commanding of the combat team brought us in sort of one by one and sat us down and was like, look, here's your performance report for the deployment. Here's what we got on the cards next year. This is what's happening. Are you happy with that? And you're talking to a major, so there's not much choice involved. Am I happy with it? Yes, sir. No, sir. And that meeting was with the squadron sergeant major as well. And the SSM that we had was like war dog through and through. Like before he came to us, he'd spent 2 years with the US Marines in sort of Western Iraq with the LAV, like battle groups out there. And like literally the first month we were back at work in 2007, we're having your mandatory training briefs in the big presentation center on the base in Darwin. And next thing you know, we've got this like US colonel or something here from the US Marines. And someone else is just getting like their long service medal. I was like, oh, this is Sergeant, Jim Jones, whatever his name was. 15 years of service, well done. There's your gong, cool. And then the brigade commanders go, I'm going to call up, whatever his name was from the US Marine Corps. He's here to present our squadron sergeant major, Warrant Officer Craig Cook from 2 Cav Regiment. Could you come up? So the Fox stands up and he stands up. And he's a big dude. And he goes and stands up next to him and starts to tell the story. And for your awards and your actions, we're presenting you with the Bronze Star. And like you see this poor sergeant next to him just got his long service medal, just was like deflated. Like we're like, whoa. And like a lot of us digs who didn't know this guy were just going like, who is this dude? Like he's just spent 2 years with the Marines and come out and he's just got his Bronze Star, and we're like, what the fuck? Who's this? And he was gun ho, man. But for the like in the right way. So so I had that meeting with them, and I was basically put on another deployment in the following year. So it was one of those things. It was just hurry up and wait. So we got back. The troops reshuffled. Guys obviously discharge and leave and post out and that sort of thing. We got a new boss in a new troop, and the boss that we got was Andrew Hastie, who's now our current Shadow Defence Minister. So working with him was really cool. But we went all over the countryside, training, doing bush exercises, and the squadron went to Townsville for I think it was a kata or one of those sort of big exercises, and we finished that up with like a troop on troop sort of force on force training, and the OC basically used that as the decider as to who was going to go where for the deployment, the two that were coming up. So everyone knew that we're going to deploy inside the next 12 months, but how these troops performed and who won got to decide where they went. So there was this massive force on force training, and like everyone took it seriously, and like camming up to the nines, and like we were right into it. And it was a really good exercise. It was a lot of fun too, because you knew you were sort of taking on your mates. And so especially for the crew commanders who had mates in the opposite troop, like we knew like they were going to be just as cunning as what they were. So there was a lot of like traditional cavalry movement stuff, using the dead ground, hiding in the shadows, and like the role of cavalry is, especially in the ASLAV world, is reconnaissance. That's your primary role, and you report to your division. You don't report necessarily to your brigade commanders. So, and doctrinally, you're a little bit forward of main infantry and armor and that sort of stuff. So, sneakiness and being clever and cunning was kind of the your bread and butter as a cavalryman. But as it turned out, our troop had the win, and the boss chose Afghanistan. The other guys went to Baghdad, and yeah, it was a sick year. I wound out that year doing my gunnery course, and yep, the troop concentrated for the coming deployment the following year. At the end of the year, came back to work in 2009. We were at work for a couple of weeks. All the gunners that were deploying went and did a 3-week combat first aid course, which was really good. So, and I really enjoyed that course. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed like the interventions we were learning. Learning about anatomy, how blood pressure works, and that sort of stuff. Really enjoyed it. And in hindsight, and hindsight's 2020, I really wished before discharge that I'd core transferred and to medics to go on down that stream, because that would have set me up so much better for what I'm doing now. Anyway, that's the way it goes. So yeah, we do that course, and then we pack all our bags and we go to Townsville for the next sort of 3 to 4 months, and we're based in Townsville with one RAR, and we go through all the training as we did before the previous deployment. Very, very similar again. And then late May deploy to Afghanistan.
So your first deployment, sorry to just quickly go back to that, you would have been a driver.
Yes.
And so this next one, you've moved up into the
Into the turret, and I'm the gunner.
Okay.
Yep.
And aside from the obvious differences, how does that change your job role and then your outlook on that deployment?
Well, it's a bit more responsibility. So what used to be really good, and I really hope it's still the same now, is that inside of like an ASLAV crew, so there's a driver, a gunner, and a commander. I probably should have made that a little bit more clearer. And everyone starts off as a driver. Now, the driver, he's understudying, he's learning, he's obviously doing his job as a driver, but he helps out the gunner as well. The gunner is, teaching the driver a bit more driver stuff, but is also understudying the crew commander. And the crew commander is supervising all this and educating and understudying them both. And your crew commander is trying to learn from, if he's a junior crew commander, he's trying to learn from the troop corporal. The troop corporal is trying to learn from the troop sergeant. And the troop sergeant is trying to look after the boss. And the boss is trying to... It's all this upward and downward education, which I think works really, really well. So as the gunner, your responsibility is basically the turret. So you're looking after the main weapon system. There's a 25mm chain gun. There's 2 7.62 machine guns you look after as well. The thermal sights, the day sights. You're looking after the sighting systems, but you're also maintaining the communications suite inside the vehicle as well. That's your responsibility to make sure that's working. The crew commander's got to command the vehicle. So it's quite often, when we're deployed in the field or a deployment, it's quite often the crew commander will be off getting orders or in some sort of planning or something like that with the boss, and the crew's just left there and they're not doing nothing. You're looking after the vehicle, you're cleaning weapons, you are making sure that your crypto is ready to go for changeovers, you're fixing whatever needs fixing, you're cooking a meal or something like that. It's not at all uncommon for an order session or a planning session to be happening, and you take a feed over to the crew commander. You knock on the back door of a personnel carrier, and they're all sort of crowded inside there around a map under a red light. I go, pass this to Nick, pass that to the boss. And, oh, thanks, mate. And they're sitting there, smashing down Jaffles and Cokes or coffees and that sort of stuff. And like, oh yeah, that's cool. Fine position, Overwatch, whatever. Yeah. So there's a lot of just maintenance and like a lot of vehicle husbandry. So you just look after your kit, and that's you help your driver. And once you're done, you're learning this, you're learning that, and you just crack on.
Yeah, nice. I imagine through that process you get quite tight with your crew too. Yeah, if you're working with them that tightly for that long, and in your preparation and your lead up to your deployment and stuff like that, you're going to build
and not just your crew but your troop as a whole. Like a troop, for that Afghan deployment, we had 2 Bushmaster crews from B Squadron 3-4 Cav Regiment, and we had 2 ASLAV crews, so 6, 8, so there's 10 of us. So, that's not a lot of people. I don't know how many dudes are on your average shift as a firey,
Generally
8 to 12
Anywhere.
guys,
Yeah, 4 to 12.
something like that. That shift would be a pretty tight crew, I'd imagine, maybe with some outliers. But yeah, and when you all get along, for the most part, I mean, it's a bit like a family. Not everyone gets along all the time. You don't get along, you work it out, but you're professional enough and you just crack on.
Keep getting the job done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that Afghan deployment, when was that? 2009?
2009, so May 2000. We were the first group from the battle group in. So the troop that we're in was called the CO's TAC Party. So it was our job to move the CO and all his hanger-oners around the battle space wherever they wanted to go. And that was really cool because we got to see a lot of our area of operation, the Australian area of operations. We went and planned for patrol bases and did a lot of cool stuff. We would do a lot of tasks where we in and out, a lot of in and out tasks, a lot of tasks where we'd take them to the governor's compound in Turncout and the CO would go and have a meeting about infrastructure or whatever. Whereas sort of more the other troops, the other patrols of the CAV guys were attached to the infantry combat teams. They go out for like prolonged clearances and or they go for like a month or 2 months at a time. So do a lot of work. And you'd run into those guys and they'd been out for sort of 3 or 4 weeks straight. And then they got long hair, they got beards and all the rest of it. And there's always sort of that friendly ribbing between everyone. But, it was a real good trip. We all got along really, really, really well. And we were busy. We were real busy.
Do you think your previous Iraq trip prepared you well? And was there some, big differences that you noted between the two countries, two deployments?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just geographically, Iraq's a bit of like a straight tabletop sort of place. There's not a lot of geographical points to sort of go, oh yeah, I know I'm here because that mountain's over there. Like Afghanistan's extremely different, where there's lots of mountain ranges and there's stark contrast between desert, where it's craggy, rocky, to lush, green. It's very much contrast, and it's different in the local population as well. You have to understand certain sensitivities. You can wave at children and women in Iraq and it's typically fine, but in Afghanistan it's a bit more extreme in that, you didn't address the women unless you had a woman with you, and even then, it's still very much, you got to be very aware of your surroundings, how you're carrying yourself, and just those little idiosyncratic sensitivities between the two cultures. Like, even though they're both sort of an Arabic culture, there's still very much some very big stark differences between just a normal Iraqi people. But even like the Iraqis, there's Sunnis and Shias. Then there's Kurds up in the north. With Afghanistan, it's extremely tribal, and there's that tribal love-hate goes back generations and generations. And then there's Pashto speakers and there's Dari speakers and then there's Arab speakers, and then it's such a hodgepodge, a real melting pot. And I suppose that could probably be attributed to like all the armies that have come through Afghanistan over the years and had their influence there. So, Afghanistan's it's a shame it's in such a state as it is, because it's a beautiful country. It really is. In the summertime when everything's lush and green and you're looking out over these pristine, clear blue skies at these amazing mountain ranges and down into the valleys. And then in wintertime where it gets even clearer again and there's snow on the mountains and it looks amazing. It's just run by such a fucking corrupt bunch of people. So,
Nice.
But no, Afghanistan, very different to Iraq. To answer your question, very different.
What about the threat?
Yes, so the threat was obviously heightened from Iraq. I mean, that first Afghan deployment, IEDs were definitely the way that we were getting hit a lot. Like our lead call sign hit 3 IEDs in a few months. So,
Were you?
That's not
sorry, was
ideal.
your call sign at that point? Were you leading it? Were the labs leading?
No, so our deployment. So that this deployment was the Mentoring Reconstruction Task Force 2, and there was obviously an MRTF 1 before that. And before that was RTF 4. Right at the start of that RTF 4 deployment, during the handover period from RTF 3 to 4, I believe, Poppy Pierce was killed as a result of his vehicle hitting an IED in Afghanistan. And that changed. Before that, ASLAV gun cars with their main armament led the way everywhere. And then after that, Bushmasters led everywhere because the Bushmaster survivability is so much better. Yes, you don't have the firepower as much up front, but you do have survivabilities of your crew, which is, the most important thing over anything else anyway. So, no, after that incident in 2007 where we lost Poppy, Bushmasters led the way after that, which we were fine with. That entire deployment I spent as the rear call sign and with the gun traversing and scanning between 9 and 3 typically during that entire time. Spent very little time facing the front, travelling backwards.
And how long was that deployment?
So that was, I think, the first or the second of the 8-month deployments. And at about month 7 or the start of month 8, we were told that we were going to be doing all the handover and nursery patrols for the oncoming battle group. So that blew our deployment out to just over 9 months by the time we got home.
It's a long time.
It was a real long, and we were tired too. We physically we looked tired, but our uniforms were tired and our armor was ratty as hell. Remember I think it was my driver, one of the other drivers, got pulled up by the incoming battle group. He was wearing brand new cams, brand new armor, everything. It almost looks like yellow kind of tinge to it. Whereas when they're worn, they look white, almost see-through. And this warrant officer has chipped him and is like, why is your body armor in such a shit state? Right, do something about it. And this driver's like, 1, I'm getting out in 2 weeks. Fuck you. 2, I'm going home next week. Fuck you. 3, do you care? I'm not going out again. Can you just find a hobby, man?
Yeah.
Do something else. just leave us alone. But yeah, that was sort of some of the mentalities of some of the people that went over there. They took that garrison mindset with them on deployment, and each their own. But I don't think it has any place on deployment at all. No. If you guys turn out to a job, you're not worrying about whether one of your firefighters has their shirt tucked in, or if they're wearing the right boots, or where's your right patch, or it's just those little 1%ers that you can sort of forgive. So long as dudes are doing their job properly.
Particularly someone who's been there for 9 months as well.
Oh, yeah.
There's that disparity. If it's easy enough for you to have, clean cams, beautiful body armour, no dramas because you got here yesterday.
Yeah.
Someone who's been, out in the dash doing whatever for 9 months.
Yep.
Yeah, we can probably cut you a bit of slack.
Yeah, but there was none of that. And it was the real war stoppers for some of these guys. Guys that, even from my deployment, those guys are attached to combat teams, like those infantry companies and platoons, living in one of the koala complexes. They take over a local house complex basically and live there, call it a platoon house, and they'd stay there for 2 months. They'd come back in, and the first thing they want is a decent feed and then a shower. And so they roll into the mess facility, and someone would be like, stop there. You need to go and shave, and you need to go change what you're wearing because you are offensive and I will charge you if you come in here looking like that again. And you just see these poor dudes who's just been living on a dirt floor for the last 2 months and eating hard rats. I just wanted a decent feed. So I was, you know what I mean? It's
the mess is about to
unnecessary.
close in 10 minutes too.
Yeah, exactly right, mate. But the deployment as a whole was a good deployment, despite, we found a lot of IEDs. We hit a bunch of IEDs. Unfortunately, we had the loss of Private Benny Ronaldo during that deployment as well, which hit the whole battle group really hard. but it was, I mean, overall, I mean, we established like schools for girls and that sort of stuff. So for the first, I mean, there's a whole generation of Afghani girls and Afghani women that got an education as a result of the coalition presence and our presence in that province. So,
Pretty cool.
mate, I think that's pretty. I mean, I'm a dad now, and I've got two
Yeah,
daughters,
yeah.
and I can't imagine like a world where my boys get anything, like everything, and my girls get nothing. I just can't compute that. But it's it's not my culture. So the fact that there is now a whole generation of Afghani women that can read and write and know a little bit more of the history than what's in a book, like one book. Yeah, that's probably what I'm most proud of all my deployments.
I was going to say, and I guess too, that's I don't come from a military background, but that's something that's tangible that you can come home and say, I did that or I fought for that, and and that's there, that's real, that's happening.
Absolutely,
and that changes the world in their country, and otherwise, I think for me, again, as a non-military person, sometimes I would think, well, what was the sense in everything that we've just carried out? But whereas that, like I say, is tangible, you can see it, you can touch it, and there's women out there getting great education from that.
Yep.
That's got to be a big, proud moment anyway for anyone
absolutely.
in that sort of situation.
And if I go speak to like my kids' school around Anzac Day and that sort of stuff, people often ask me like, what was the best thing you did when you were overseas? And I said, well, the best thing I did was help build schools for kids. That's what I'm like. I'm not like, contacts, whatever else, whatever. Building, having a hand in getting those schools built for kids that otherwise will never get an education. That's probably what I'm most proud of.
And I guess it's your kids' sort of group of friends are going, you mean what?
Exactly
build
right.
schools for someone? Like we just come to school every day and get everything. We
Very much taken for granted.
Wow. Interesting.
And I guess the other flip side of that too is it's harder to see sometimes your contribution to the overall mission as well, like the bigger mission, because we'd been there for so many years, or however many years, and it's hard to see in that little snippet that you're there, how you're shifting that or contributing to that mission. Like you are, but like you said, at Jando, you can actually, that's a tangible thing that you've seen that you've done. The school's there, it's being attended to.
Yeah. I mean, sadly enough, I think it was, 2, maybe 3 years after my last deployment, the word had come around that the patrol base that we were in had been taken back over by Taliban, and all the schools had been started to be shut down and that sort of stuff. That kind of breaks your heart. But you just, for the time that we were there, we did what we did. We had the effect that we had. I can't do much more than that.
And someone in that period of time, whatever that was, had gained something.
Yeah,
the Afghan
absolutely.
women had gained something. And something that they would have never been given the opportunity to do.
Yep. And there's been a couple of women, like Afghan women, that have since, obviously left Afghanistan and gone and done more study and all that sort of stuff. And they've been quite public on social media and the news and that sort of stuff. Like, if it wasn't for the Americans and the Australians and the Dutch and everyone else who formed the ISAF forces in Afghanistan, I wouldn't be here. I'd still be either back there or dead. Like, man, like say what you want about our influence and our hand in the global war on terrorism, and even now I look back and think about Iraq and like, did we really need to be there? Probs not. But for the effect that we had for especially Afghan children, I think that was worth it.
And see, I'm sitting at home not seeing any of that or hearing any of that. You hear that and you go, well, there is a place, and it is worth it for that to provide those opportunities.
And even those fellows that were killed as a result of our presence there, I think, and the ones that I knew, like, so I'd met Poppy before he was killed. Lieutenant Michael Fussell, he was killed during an SOTG rotation. We worked with him at the Special Forces Training Centre in 2008, and he was killed September or October 2008. We'd worked with Benny Ronaldo the day before he was killed. Marty Lambert, who was killed by an IED. He was a sniper from 2RAR. He was in my vehicle, a month or so, 5 weeks before he was killed. you know, if you'd asked any of the you know, special forces commandos, you know, you'd ask any of those guys, you know, the day before they were killed, hey, if you want to go out, how do you want to go out? They'll tell you they want to go out with their weapon in their hand and their boots on. Like they want that's
There was a purpose.
yeah.
So how does that, getting back to, you just mentioned a whole list of, you know, fairly decorated people who lost their lives over in war zone. How does that affect a unit? Obviously, it has a massive effect, but you've still got a job to do.
Yep.
Where's that grieving process for you guys? How does that look? I can imagine that would only be a short thing because you've got to get back and do what you've got to do. So that's got to play up in someone's mind somehow. Like, did I give the respect? But
yeah, it's a difficult one, definitely. You always, I think you go out there like, okay, we've just lost one of our own, and the realization is that that's right. Okay, the enemy has a say in what we do and how we operate. Like, we do have the biggest sticks in the valley, and we can reach out and touch people from a long way away. And then we've got all the support we have. It's just on the end of a radio from the American military as well. But there is in the back of your mind that some of these dudes are playing for keeps. So, but at the same time, like you said, you've got a job to do. You know, the war doesn't stop. The guys that lost, you know, especially Benny's section, you know, you could see all over their face. Like, there's a piece of them that died that day. And then like they would, you know, Benny was replaced of sorts, and so was the other fellow who lost his leg that day. And you know, I really feel for those guys coming in and trying to fill the position of those boys. You know, they're big shoes to fill, man. Like, real big. I don't envy trying to fit in with those guys. So it's felt by the people who knew them and who worked with them, and you never forget it. There's a level of right. Well, they've taken one of ours. Let's saddle up. Let's go back out. Let's take the fight back to them, kind of thing. And you just, you know, you ramped up operations again, and you just, mate, you just have to crack on.
I look at it like, and I'm trying to look at the subtle differences between the defence side of things. You know, emergency responders, whether it be QP or fire service, police service, ambulance. We have lost lives in the fire service, but that's a duration of an incident, as in it might be a 2-hour structure fire where unfortunate things happened, and that we go back to station, and then there's obviously that grieving time, and then, you know, we face up to work, whether it be 4 days later or 5 days later, whatever that may be. Whereas that war, you were talking, well, Josh was saying, how long did that last? 9 months, a 9-month deployment, where it's day in, day out, you're doing it and doing it. That, you know, it's hard for me to fathom as a non-ADF person, but that's got to be heavy on anyone's mind of day in, day out stuff. And
look, you do grieve in your own sort of way. But there's not the typical grieving process like you would have here. You can't just go out and smash 27 beers into your head and just try and turn your brain off. You know, you kind of just have to acknowledge it and put it aside, and let's unpack this later, kind of thing.
Or, you know, obviously you've got your core mates and everything there, but there's, you know, anything that happens here with us, it's, I just want to get home to my family and chill and just be normal for a minute and you know, get my head around this. Whereas 9 months, well, that's, you know, a long time.
So I think, guys, we just sort of hyper focused on the job at hand. You just take one task at a time. And, you know, I was listening to some of our mates. I just did his podcast, actually, Sam, and he brought up like this quote of like, you know, a man dies twice. You know, once when he dies, and the second time when the last person speaks their name. And throughout that deployment, you would still talk about Benny, or you'd hear guys talking about Benny. Like, remember when he did this? Remember he did that? You know, remember how good he was at this? Or you know, he's never been forgotten.
I was going to say they're pretty much kept alive through that whole.
Absolutely.
process.
And even now, I believe in the battalions, like, you know, there's the area gym in 2RAR is the Matthew Lambert gym. You know, there's a range out the back of Laverack Barracks, I believe. It's also named after him as well. So every time, you know, every anniversary is obviously hard, but, you know, it's these guys aren't forgotten.
No, definitely not.
They're definitely not forgotten.
And I think too, you've only got to look at you look at Anzac Day now with the amount of young kids that get involved, and then I think, you know, if we ever lose that, we're in big trouble.
Yeah.
That, you know, the respect is still paid, and it's brought up through the young kids of you know, to pay their respect. So, you know, we don't want to see that ever disappear.
No, definitely not.
No, and I think from my point of view, you get really good at compartmentalising things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Army does a really good job of instilling that mission focus in you. So it's like you've still got a job to do. And, you know, you have an understanding that is a part of what you do. And that's a very real consequence.
Yeah.
And it could happen. So as much as it sucks, it you know, it's hard to describe how much it sucks. It's not unexpected as well.
Yes.
So it doesn't make it any easier to deal with at the time when it happens or involved. But you then, like you said, hyper focus, get on the mission, go back even harder.
Yeah.
And I think for myself, I think, well, it was, what would those guys want us to do?
Exactly right.
Would they want us to sit in the base and, you know, wallow in their death, or would they want us to go out and take that fight to the enemy and keep going and succeed in our mission? And I think that's
Pretty clear-cut answer.
How we got got through.
Absolutely. And there's a lot to be said for that sort of, like, and you nailed it perfectly, like that whole compartmentalising, like just put that in a box in the back of your mind and let's maybe look at that again later on.
So what about when you do finally come home after a deployment? How does life slow down for you? As in, you've come from a very, very full-on area, and then you've come back to a somewhat, you know, back to normal life with family.
Well, for myself, so that deployment, I went for my mid-deployment break. I came back to Australia with the intent to put a deposit on a house and, you know, grow up a little bit. So what I did when I came home, I was here for 3 days and I bought a jet ski. So, as you do. So I was out jet skiing, and
I think you deserve a jet ski. Just let me say that.
So I did that, and through the course of like jet skiing, I met a girl and stayed in touch with her. And in November, after I came back, decided that we'll give it a go. And so when I got back from that deployment, I took 12 or 14 weeks off, and I just stayed with her the entire time. Like that was like my focus. Like, I just want to get back. I just want to spend time with this person. And so I did. We travelled and spent time together and fell in love with her, and wife now and mother of my kids. So, yeah. So that time was also, you know, realising what we had then was very special. There's a little bit of planning for the future and that sort of stuff. And she's talking about moving to Darwin. I'm like, fucking, you are not moving to Darwin. You will hate it. Just visit, sure, come visit, but no, it's too expensive. It's you just won't enjoy it. You won't like it. But she had a friend in Townsville, so like, what if we moved to Townsville? I said, okay. So I eventually get back to work, and about 2 weeks after I get back to work after that leave, I get tapped on the shoulders. Like, do you want to go to your crew commander course? And I wasn't loving being back around the cages and that at work. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go to my crew commander's course, and turned up to there, and the other sort of 10 guys on the course were all people I'd worked with before on different courses or deployments, wherever. So it was like a little mini boys club, and all the instructors, we knew them as well from deployments or, you know, around the
footy trip.
Kind of, yeah. But still with high professional standards.
Yeah.
So did my crew commander's course. It's about 3 months back down in sunny Puckapunyal in Victoria, in the middle of, like, he went literally like June through to August.
yuck.
It was so cold, and I'm such a bitch in the cold. I just cannot. For whatever the reason, like colder. Like right now, it's summertime and I'm loving it. Shorts, t-shirts, thongs, perfect.
Oh, mate, you would have been coming down from Darwin too, 28 degrees, sunny.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
into
exactly
the depths
right.
of Pucker winter.
Yeah,
Yuck.
and just like rain and sleet and just for whatever the reason, Pucker it just rained every day. Just every day was just shitty fucking weather. But it was
Shout
also
out to Pucker Punch.
yeah, School of Armour, go School of Armour. But it was great. It was great, like learning, and it was one of those things too. Like once the penny dropped and you kind of got the basics under control and you really got it, it stops being like you stop not concentrating, but you're concentrating on what you're doing, but things are happening and you're making these decisions and you're commanding your vehicle and you're giving fire commands and this sort of stuff and you're finding next targets and you're shooting, you're moving, you're communicating, and you realize you're having an absolute blast doing it. Like you're having fun. Like once that penny drops and you kind of got it, and you're wheeling and dealing as a troop and doing live fire and, you know, doing these big bounds and this sort of stuff. And like even the staff and your DS and that sort of stuff assessing you sort of sit back and go, you enjoyed that one, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah, that was good fun. He's like, yeah, I could tell because you relaxed into it and it happened a lot more naturally. So yeah, I had really good time in on that course with some really good dudes. Go back to Darwin. And Darwin, as it does, kind of punches you in the face when you walk out of the airport. Back to the unit, literally within an hour of being back at work. Like, hey, we want people for Townsville posting. Who's keen? I went, yep, I'll go. So got to Townsville and got my posting. And my last day in the regiment, I had to go and talk to the RSM for some reason. It's like, I just got an email like, come and see me, which is never really great. The unit RSM was just come and talk to me. But it wasn't just me. It was me and the other sort of 4 or 5 guys that were coming from Darwin to post to B Squadron 3-4 Cav. And he kind of tore strips off us. Like, you fucking leaving the regiment. What's wrong with you? You'll never deploy again. This sort of thing. And first day at work in Townsville in 2011, hey, you're all deploying. We need Bushmaster crews to go to the Special Operations Task Group. We've got 2 of those deployments to man. We've got an entire battle group to man. Like, if you don't pick up a deployment, you're just unlucky kind of thing. So literally day one back at work, and we're messaging our boys back in Darwin like, hey, suck eggs, we're going back to Afghan. So, yeah, they were filthy. But yeah, it was really good. And coming from Darwin, like Townsville was like the land of milk and honey. Like, we had these beaches, there's Maggie Island and, Airlie Beach is down the road and Cairns up the road. Whereas Darwin, you travel 3 hours south, you're in Katherine. It's not exactly a step forward anywhere. And, the nightlife is better. Like, just, I don't know, Townsville's just, by comparison, is so far and away just such a better place. Conversely, there were guys posted up from the Cav unit here in Brisbane to Townsville, and they're in tears. They're like, "Oh, I really miss Brisbane. I really miss the Goldie." And it's like, "Are you serious? Like, you do not know how bad it can be, man. Like the heat. Like we actually have a semi-winter here in Townsville. It's by comparison, it is just such far and away a better place. Mm-hmm. But same thing again. Got notified that the deployment was going on, so drove home and told my girlfriend, how's your day at work? And like, well, going back to Afghanistan, so that's a bit awkward. So she's like, okay, when? And I'm like, about 4 or 5 months. I'm like, okay, righto. So that leads on to like months and months of training, lots of time back in the bush, that sort of stuff, lots of time away. And to her credit, she handled it like an absolute pro. Like she took it on the chin and just soldiered on. Like she found friends of her own, found a gym, found a job, friends, all the rest of it. Like, she tackled that like an absolute champion.
That's awesome, because I guess you had an insight into the posting cycle growing up, moving, that you were sort of used to that nomadic style of living.
Yes.
Whereas I'm guessing she probably wasn't.
No, definitely not.
And she's
Absolutely
probably
not.
picked up and moved to Townsville. Like there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. But to her credit, yeah, she copped it like an absolute champion. And, you know, going into this deployment too, like I was still super keen, super green. I had my eyes on doing selection for commandos in the year or two to follow. Like this deployment came up and I was like, oh, this is a really good chance to, in the downtime, train really hard, which we did. But as the deployment turned out, I really ditched that green. Like my attitude changed, flipped completely 180 by the time the end of that deployment came around as a result of things that happened, decisions that were made, the command that we had. Like I was just so probably disenfranchised with the whole thing. And I was just like I don't need this shit in my life anymore. So, but no, the deployment kicked off really well. Had a great section of dudes. The infantry company we were attached to, good blokes. The engineers that we got were all good dudes. Everyone was getting along from the start really, really well. Like our snipers were champions. Yeah, we had some really good platoon sergeants. The area that we eventually went to in Afghanistan was the Chura-Baluchi Valley, so I'd operated a lot in that valley previously, so I was pretty comfortable with where I was going. But yeah, that deployment racked on and yeah, it turned out the way it did. But yeah, it was busy.
Was there any significant changes or differences from your first trip to your second? Like you said, you're just operating in pretty much the same area. Felt pretty comfortable. Did you notice any changes?
So going into this deployment, I was a crew commander, but we weren't living in the main base of Tarankout anymore. We were living out of patrol bases in combat teams, and we were living with, I think there was about 100, 200 Afghani soldiers that we were mentoring at the same time that lived on the same patrol base as us. And before we even got there, about 2 months before we even got there, or a month before we got there, Private Jones was killed in a green on blue by an Afghan. So within ourselves, within the sections, and within all the armoured crews, like a code word was basically passed around cattle dog. And if you heard someone shout cattle dog, that meant that you start taking slight pictures on Afghans and Afghan army dudes in the case of a green on blue attack. So there was that. I mean, the accommodation we had on Tarankout, we're living in these chalets that were basically shipping containers that we retrofitted with bunk beds and shelves and all the like to live in. They were air conditioned, they were heated. Each block had 2 shower blocks and toilets and all the rest of it attached to it. Whereas the patrol base that we lived in for this last deployment, we lived in a tent. And there were 8 of us in this tent. And we built that thing out. Like it was a chalet of its own, where we each had our own little sectioned corner of it, to be left alone. We had pictures up and whatever else. But of all the deployments, the last one was my favourite, just because there's a bit more autonomy, I suppose. The only thing that let us down was the command team that we had during the deployment. We were led by an absolute flog, just a narcissistic egomaniac, an absolute fuckwit. And his decisions and the way that he commanded the combat team and the decisions he made and the missions that we ran ultimately led to dudes getting injured. So, the fact that he got fired years later, it was like I slept pretty soundly that night.
Speaks volumes, hey, when you're getting fired from defence.
Oh, if you're the commanding officer of an infantry battalion and Chief of Army says, "You're done, champ. Fuck off." That says a lot. But it's just sad at the time that he got as far as he got. But the deployment, the deployment was awesome. Like I said, we had a really good team of dudes we were working with. Again, there's little idiosyncrasies that you have working with combined arms teams. But for the most part, everyone's getting along well. We'd found a bunch of IEDs. We'd hit a couple of IEDs. One of my best mates hit a 40-kilo IED, and as a result, he was sent home. So I went over there as the rear call sign commander of the patrol, and which there's not a lot of responsibility in that. You're just the last guy in a packet of vehicles. You scan your arcs, you talk on the radio, and a really senior driver. So he didn't need a lot of supervision at all. He's an absolute champion. But as that deployment progressed, I stepped up from being the absolute rear call sign to the second in command of the patrol, and eventually I was in command of the section as a digger, as a trooper. So, yeah, and that was a result of dudes being sent home. The section commander, his wife had a cesarean, so he ended up having to be home for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and that's when I stepped up to be the section commander. And it was one of those things like drinking through a fire hose. All of a sudden, I've gone from having very, very little responsibility to having a say in the security of the base every night and planning operations and all this sort of stuff. And it was only because the only reason I think I sort of kept my head above water, only just, was through my experiences from my other deployments. Like, if I didn't have that, I think I would have been screwed from the start. But I was also fortunate to have a very good section of dudes that, even as we were all diggers, like, Jeff was in charge. And if Jeff said it's time to go out to the vehicles and get to work, they all went. So, no, that was really good. And I really take my hat off, and I really thank those guys for being as professional as they were. And it's the same with the infantry sections we work with. They'd make our life easier by grabbing us, food and water to replenish the vehicles, or that, strip one of our machine guns for us and clean it, and this stuff, just little things like that. Those little 1%ers that made life a little bit easier for us. Like, I'm just super grateful for those guys and how they interacted with us. But it was a rough trip in that we lost, like I said, Matty Lambert through that IED strike out at Mirabad, and that was really gutting. Like, Matty was just a fucking champion of a dude, just a solid dude, funny, just absolute hilarious bloke. And then we had the deaths later on of another green on blue attack where Luke Gavin, Ash Burt and Bryce Duffy were killed in that green on blue attack. And we were the section that reacted from Tarankout out to that base. And you go out there and, like, it's a bit cliche, but, that 1,000-yard stare, the dudes who were out there that day, and we got there and there's still pools of blood on the ground. The Afghans are still sitting on the ground with their hands on their head, under armed guard by Australian soldiers. But, they're looking right through you. And you're like, hey, bro, how you doing, man? And they're like, yeah, I'm good. And it's like, do you realise that you're at instant right now with your finger just shadowing the trigger while you're talking to me in front of me? Like, oh, no, I didn't realise it. Okay, mate. Do you know you're good? And he's like, yep. And he'd be looking straight through you. So you just know, like, I remember driving away and talking to the boys that night, and I said, like, man, those files will never be the same again.
So just for those listeners that don't quite understand the structure, can you explain a little bit about that green on blue?
So the whole job of this task force on this last deployment was mentoring. So we went over there to teach the Afghans how to be soldiers, professional soldiers. And as it was, you can fast forward to the 2020 or 2022 drawdown, where it was, they all just fucking shit themselves and ran away or executed by Taliban. So the whole point of us going over there was to mentor the Afghans and teach them. So that was the whole reason being there, which is why we were living with them and working with them so closely. Now, unfortunately, the Taliban and the local insurgencies had figured out that they could get their own people into this organisation pretty easily and embed with us, and at opportune moments, that engaged us. So, and then the following deployment, they had another green on blue attack. Green on blue meaning, we're blue force, the good guys, and the green force were the Afghan force.
Right.
So, green on blues throughout that 2011, 12, I think 13, there were a bunch of them. It was a real popular tactic used by the Taliban and by insurgents. I think it's green on blue attacks.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, it made it particularly tricky and complex. Like you said, you're already going into, because of Private Jones, you already knew that was a tactic, right?
Yep.
So you're going in there with that code word and knowing that you potentially have to turn your weapons inwards.
Yeah.
And then subsequently did happen again, unfortunately, on that trip. So not only are you facing outwards, you're now worried about what's happening inside the walls as well.
Oh, yeah.
And then, like you said, you also had the other element, which is not a threat per se, but the command element.
Yeah.
Also imposing a threat through their decision-making.
Absolutely.
As well. There's a lot of shit coming at you
Oh, yeah.
at one time to try and navigate and understand.
Yeah, the mental gymnastics was like, especially during that last green on blue attack where Luke Gavin and the other two lads were killed. Like, we returned back to our patrol base that night and we took over base security. And previous to that, I mean, we always manned towers and that sort of stuff. There was always a roving picket of like someone with all their kit on. It was typically a junior non-commissioned officer, just keeping an eye on base security, making sure the towers are doing what they're supposed to be doing and that sort of thing, and then checking in with the command post. But when that happened, like, we took over all base security. And then previous to that, it was like 50-50. Australians were manning like their side of the base and the Afghans had manned the other side of the base. And we were walking around with inside our own patrol base with body armour on, with our webbing on, with a weapon. We always had like minimum 2 weapons on us, that sort of stuff. We travelled in pairs. And if at night you saw an Afghan over the Australian side, like, you bailed him up immediately. And you didn't care if he was in his uniform with his weapon system or in his jocks and a pair of thongs. There was, as soon as that happened, it was like, you stop there. And because you're in pairs, one person's covering him, the other person's grabbing him and going, what are you doing here? And it was that real, you took, with the whole fight and flight thing, we were probably a little bit over the top and we probably manhandled these dudes a little bit, probably too harshly. But when that happened, like, no one's taking chances. No one's taking chances. I don't care if you got a fucking pocket knife down your pants. You're coming to me, champ. Like, and you would take them, almost at gunpoint. You would escort them round to their security and be like, fucking check your boy. And it's one of those things, there's a bit of argy-bargy there for a little bit between the Afghans and the Australian just command elements, trying to find that peaceful way to operate again. Like, how are we supposed to trust you people? Like, in this way, well, we've come all this way to help you be better, and
turned on us,
and you turn on us. Like, so it's fucked. It wasn't great.
Fucking wild.
Oh, dude,
Wild.
Yeah.
To think about doing that to the people that you're supposed to be there to fucking help. But anyway, so you mentioned you were really green at the start of that deployment.
Oh, yeah.
And then by the end of it, disenfranchised.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think contributed to that? Do you think it was a single incident, or do you think it's something that just sort of manifested over that 8 or 9 months that you were there?
Look, to be fair, it probably manifested, but it came to, like, the straw that broke the camel's back was my best mate being blown up. Like, on a task that we didn't need to do, being directed to do it in a manner we didn't need to do it. And, like, all the restrictions that were put on us that day that didn't need to be, like, that was the moment, like, 23rd of September 2011 at about 12:35 in the afternoon was when I was like, what the fuck am I doing in this job? We've got people like this clown dictating what's happening with my life. And I've just watched my best mate blow up when I thought he was dead. When the bomb went off, my initial reaction was like, okay, Chris is dead. And my second thought was, how am I going to explain that to his to his brother, who's again one of my best mates. And because you go through training with his older brother, I went through basic training and employment training with him, and he's from Melbourne. So when we were allowed to, on weekends we travelled to Melbourne. I'd stayed at his house. I knew his mum and dad. I'd known his younger brother that just got blown up since he was 14, 15. And now all of a sudden, I was convinced he was dead. The force was that big and that bad in that IED that Christopher and his driver Reese, their rifles cocked themselves in their stowage racks. Like that's a bang.
It's a big blast.
And even like the windshield of the Bushmaster that they were driving along in, like it had blown outwards, and the heads of the bolts had sheared off and like been blasted forward. Like I don't know if you've done any training with Bushmasters or anything like that, from like a road crash rescue point of view. I know we've got a mutual mate that's done a little bit of it in Townsville. But those Bushmaster windshields are pretty bloody thick. And to just blow one out completely and have all the bolts that hold that in completely sheared off, like that's a lot of force, man. It's a lot of force. But no, that was the moment. I think I was just like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And I was so green, so keen. And then the other reason I didn't try for SF selection, because I knew my attitude was so poor. Like as fit as I was and as fit as I got on that deployment, like it was all not for nothing, because I looked good, I felt good. But I knew that the attitude that I had and the mindset I had there was no place for that in Special Forces selection. So I didn't chuck in.
So ultimately, it was the command that did that.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously it resulted in that traumatic incident, but it was ultimately the decisions that led to that.
Absolutely.
Mate,
I was a lifer. You talk to any of my mates I grew up with, mum, dad, like when I told dad after Chris had hit his IED, I was like, Dad, I don't know if I can do this shit anymore. And he's like, oh, really? I said, yeah, I think I'm going to do something else. I think I need to get out. But the other way I've kind of looked at it since now, from a very introspective point of view, like I've lived in and around army since I was born. So it's not service. I'd hit about 6 years by that stage of my own, but being grown up in it and being influenced by it as much as I have been by the army, like the army's kind of pushed me around my entire life at that point, and I'd had enough.
I mean, we talk a lot about, well, probably not so much on air, but Josh and I have had conversations about that moral injury, and that seems to me was a massive contributor to potentially your situation where
it's huge, isn't it?
We've done all this, and you're telling me to do what? Like, that's in any organisation there seems to be that small percentage of moral injury that's really, contributing to PTSD rather than what's actually happening on the battleground.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too, like I said, that the restrictions that were put on us that day just didn't need to happen. It was purely for that man to dictate like what was to happen. And when we got those orders, we're all standing around the back of the boss's vehicle, and there's like a loudspeaker there, and we're getting these orders come through, and all the commanders are standing there, and we're all subject matter experts in our field, and we've got EOD guys there, bomb experts. We've got our engineer search element commander there, and all the armored vehicle crewers, and all of us armored vehicle guys are on our second, third deployments, and when we're pushing back, and we're not pushing back because we don't want to do it. We're pushing back as like, hey, all right, you want us to go down this route and to clear the route for this purpose. Okay, 1, that's not our job. 2, we can't do that in the time frame that you've given us. Can can we box around this route and utilize the dash? We can move quicker. We can get there, get back. You know, we can achieve your mission, but can we do it this way? And it was like, no, you will do it like this. Imagine turning up to a crash and having someone who's done maybe one crash before say, hey, you should be doing this. Like, hang on, how about you just shush and go over there and watch through your iPhone and complain about it on social media later and just let the experts do their job. Like, it was that real micromanagement that just killed me.
You talked about the groups that were in that conversation or that conversation. Was there much resistance? I mean, I'm gathering the rank structure is obviously so tight that's come from a higher rank that, you know, but was there conversations about, obviously you just spoke about it then about, you know, can we?
Yep.
But at the end of the day, that final decision was made. I mean...
Yep, and like we had like warrant officers from our explosive ordnance disposal, the EOD guys going, you've given us intel that we've got, you know, a handful of devices on this route, and while we were getting orders, we heard a bang from the direction we were about to travel. We're like, okay, intel's pretty good, devices on the road. It's like we find a device, we have to confirm the device, we have to look after it, you know, do all all those steps processes. You know, if we find a device, that's an hour out of the trip, out of the mission, and there's supposed to be multiple. You know, and so it's not just, you know, junior crew commanders putting this stuff up. It's like guys with years and years of experience, and the search commander going, looking at the map, there's a lot of D files through there, and they're textbook places to put IEDs. That's going to take me 2 to 3 hours to search each one of these, and we've been given maybe a 6-hour window to achieve this task by our officer commanding to do this task. And he's just not having a bar of it at all. He's like, no, you'll get there and you'll get back. And it's like, damn everything else. Do it the way I tell you to do it or else kind of thing.
So how was the feeling after that incident?
Man, I was mad. I'd had a hand in recovering the vehicle that got struck. And as we collapsed back through to take it back to the main base at Tarankout, I stopped at the command post because the entire combat team had turned out for this specific build of building an Afghan National Police checkpoint or some stupid thing. And then that was going horrendously. It kept falling over. The place they were building it was just ridiculous and just didn't make sense. But anyway, not my bag. But we collapsed back through that position, and the OC and the company sergeant major were both there, and they'd never seen a struck IED, like an IED struck vehicle before in person, and like their eyes were wide, like cartoonishly wide, and like mouths open. And I said to my driver Tim, I said, mate, just hold here, mate. So he stops, and as you can imagine, you know, dude up in a vehicle. I take my helmet off, rested on my gun. I looked at them both, put my sunnies up on my head, and I said, are you happy now? Are you happy? Have a look. Didn't have to be this way. Nothing? Okay. Sunnies back on, helmet back on. All right, Tim, let's go. And for the rest of the deployment, neither one of them could look me in the eye. They saw me coming, they go the other way. Like, they knew they did the wrong thing. And I know the OC. I know he's reached out and touched base with my mate Chris, who, you know, was wounded as a result of that and has apologised. But that dude's never made a public apology to the rest of the combat team that he fucked over. And there were so many of us that discharged and went down our own rabbit holes of mental illness as a result of his direct influence. So yeah, I mean, the fact that he was fired as a CO just brings my heart absolute joy.
He got his comeuppance in the end.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but unfortunately that's what happens, and that was the very real consequences of decisions made. And you know, from that point on, you said you're pretty angry, but that was September. You said,
yeah.
When did you go home? Because there was still a few months there. You had.
I went home in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's still, you know, a good 3 or 4 months.
Yep.
How did you and the boys perceive the trip, the job, taskings, everything after that?
Look, to be honest, we were still pretty professional about it. like we understood, kind of like we said before, like soldiers go to war and soldiers don't come home from war sometimes. Like it really sucked for, we lost Chris and he's, an absolute asset. And, today he's kicking goals. He's doing really well. He's down in Victoria. He's a firefighter down there and he's just crushing it in life. So he's doing well. But there was an element to it of like, all right, next job, let's go. Next job, let's go. It was hard for me as the 2IC to keep the guys motivated because we'd get these jobs. It'd be like, take this paperwork down to TK and get it signed and be back. Make sure you're back here by last light because you got another job tomorrow. And it's just shit like, seriously? We're literally doing milk runs to TK. What the hell? Like, there's still an ID threat out there. We still have to clear certain areas. We still have to do all this. And it's just like, we're not here to be your admin bitch. But that's kind of how we were treated. So it was frustrating. It was supremely frustrating. But no, to the credit of the guys and to everyone in that combat team, we just still sort of pulled our socks on, got your battle rattle on and went to work.
Did it, got it done.
Yep.
Yeah, nice. And so anything else significant between that and the end of the trip, or was it sort of pretty cruisy because that came into winter then over?
Yeah. Well, I hit my own IED as well, which wasn't ideal. I don't recommend it. I remember it wasn't as bad. It was like a partial detonation. So for the first time, this IED changed the way that coalition forces did business in Afghanistan. From then on in, it was the first time this had ever happened. So it was a bitumen road that the Afghan Provincial Reconstruction Team had put in between the main base at Tarankout all the way going north. It was supposed to run up to Kabul, I think. But it had gone past our patrol base. So we've got beauty, hardtop, and we can rocket run down to our patrol bases and whatever else. And the insurgents and Taliban had sort of seen this, just cruising the road without searching it again. Because in our heads, like, you can't put a bomb in the road when it's a sealed bitumen road. It's a pretty hard place to put a bomb. And if you dig in the road, we're probably going to see it. As it turns out, we were cruising down this road and there was just dust on the road, which wasn't uncommon. Like, a bit of wind, dust gets over the road anyway, everywhere. It was just a commonplace thing. And it was a dead straight piece of road. And we're rolling along and we were listening. I think I had some tunes kicking on in the vehicle. I was playing through my headset. And next thing is boom. And the next thing I felt was this freaking pain in my lower back. What the fuck is that? Tim, hold here. And the next thing I know, I hear from the call sign behind me is go, contact IED, wait out. And I immediately rack the machine gun and start pointing towards the green zone, not realising that I'd just hit an IED. And then comms start coming in and the patrol commander's like, Alpha, you okay? Alpha. And I'm like, look back and give him the thumbs up. I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. He goes, what do you want to do from here? And I said, just wait out. And I took my helmet off and jumped on the roof of the Bushmaster and front left wheel is completely destroyed. I go, oh, shit. And I look back and there's a hole in the ground about the size of a bowl, a bit smaller than a dinner plate. And I said, what do you want to do? What do you want? My troop commanders, what do you want to do? What do you need from me? And I said, look, just move up to my left shoulder and be like just a hard point so we can change this tyre. We'll keep going. Okay. We're the lead vehicle. So the engineers get out and they go and investigate the hole and they go, oh shit, hang on. There's a palm oil container in the road. So this is only partially detonated. So it was like, oh shit. So everyone, perimeter out, the whole works. And I've got footage of it actually at home somewhere. And they put a charge on it and they detonate it. And the whole charge just goes straight up. Like, whereas if the dirt sort of goes out a little bit, but this charge went straight up. And one of the EOD guys said to me afterwards, like, if you'd have hit that and that had worked the way it was supposed to, man, you'd be a mess. you would be a puddle in the back of your Bushmaster. So that kind of started to play in my mind a little bit. But no, as it was a they suspect a anti-personnel mine that was upside down with det cord coil underneath it, and that det cord went down and wrapped itself around the palm oil container full of homemade explosives, estimated between 15 and 20 kilos. So had it gone up, I would be missing legs and whatever else. So, but as it was, it didn't, and by virtue of whatever, I got to crack on and go through the rest of the deployment. But as it was, I was getting tired and I was getting narky and everything else, and just like my attitude had slipped and whatever else. Like I'd walk past the OC and I wouldn't even acknowledge him. There's no like, good morning, sir. How are you, sir? Hello, sir. None of that. It's just whatever. I just look the other way, and I get in trouble for it. But when the section commander eventually came back, I think he saw that I was pretty fried, and by that stage they're starting to organise the relief in place for the incoming battle group. And he came to me one night, he's like, would you be upset if I put you on the first rip out? And I said, oh, look, I don't care. Look, I really don't care. By this stage, like, just, it's whatever. If you send me home early, I'll go. But if not, I'll stay and do my job. I'm not going to be upset if I don't go home first. So he's, oh, okay, right. We'll have a chat and see what I can do. Okay, cool. And as it was, I ended up being on the first plane out, but I think it was just over 8 months. Literally just over 8 months that I got home.
What month? January?
Yeah, January. I got home early to mid to late January, I think it was, but I was on leave, and we'd had Australia Day. I think I was on leave. First day leave was like Australia Day, I think.
How'd you go coming home this time, noting that your mindset very, very different from the last two trips?
Pretty unsure, like very unsure. Like I'd had like some other leadership courses I needed to do to promote. I kind of wanted to be promoted, but I didn't. I went on that leadership course, and the first sort of 4 days of it was like food and sleep deprivation. And I'm just questioning, why am I doing this? Like, I've just come from Afghanistan where we were sitting on hills being cold, tired, hungry and awake. So I started to sort of question a lot of the things that we were doing, and I lasted 4 days before I was like, oh, fuck, I can't do this. I'm done. So I remember walking out of there, walking off the course, and like the course senior instructor was like, oh, you're throwing your career away. What I know now is I was just burnt out. I'd spent time in Afghanistan every year for the previous 4 years, and I was just tired, and I just needed to stop and have some not army time. And I didn't get a lot of it when I came back from that. I didn't think I had that much leave. I think I had 4 or 5 weeks off before I came back to work. But yeah, I wasn't. My attitude just wasn't. Like, my heart just wasn't in it anymore.
You were done. It was gone.
I was just done. And I think if I'd taken maybe 6 months leave without pay or something like that, and gone and I don't know, worked a bar or travelled or something like that with my so I've proposed with my fiance when I got back from that deployment. I think if her and I just went somewhere and did something else for 6 months, it probably would have changed my attitude a lot. But as it was, I was pretty done with army.
It's generally the way it goes. Get the shits, chuck the D in, and get away. As quick as you can.
Well, I wasn't quite like that. I think I knew I wanted to get out, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Like our mutual mate Luke, he'd at that stage gotten into the firefighters and was like, mate, come over here. And the line to get in there was pretty long. Emergency services seemed to be the next best place to take my skills and experience. So that's where I sort of concentrated the efforts. Found out that to be a paramedic, you needed to actually study and have a degree to be a paramedic. I thought it was just a school that you went to and they taught you how to ambulance, but that's not the case. And And then the Queensland Police were having a bit of a decent recruiting drive at the time. Oh, they were recruiting. They're never not recruiting. But it was actually my troop sergeant, Will Boyack, at the time. And he said, why don't you chuck in for being a copper? You've probably got the right attitude for it. So, no, okay. So, I rang up and 3 or 4 months later, I'm at the academy.
Quick turnaround.
Yeah. And I was at, people in my squad at the academy, some of them had been waiting for 2 or 3 years to get to the academy.
Yeah, right.
And they're like, how long did you wait? And I was like, oh, no, a couple of months. And they're like, months? Like, I've been waiting 2 years.
Where did you go? Because there's an academy in Townsville and Oxley.
Yeah.
Is that right? So where did you do?
Yeah, I did Oxley.
Yep.
Oxley Academy.
So did you pick up and move with your now fiance?
Yep. Literally left army on a Friday afternoon, started the academy Monday morning. We were still unboxing our house while I started at the academy. So it was a bit wild. Probably not the best way to do it. There's no decompression. There's just there's straight out of army, and it's that drinking through a fire hose again. But you're learning legislation, you're learning your powers, and you're learning all the other stuff. All the book knowledge that comes with policing.
Yeah, right. And academy is 9 months.
It was only 6 then.
Okay.
So I don't know how long it is now. I heard it's longer. I heard it's shorter. I really don't know. But at the time, it was you would do blocks of a certain subject. So you do community safety, then you do drugs, domestic violence, traffic, whatever else, and then sprinkled all through that are all your hands-on skills. You're learning all your handcuffing skills, your wrist locks and takedowns and that sort of stuff. You're learning the baton eventually. You do 10 days, I think, of firearms training. So you're learning your Glock 22. And then we backed that up with taser training, getting tased. I think the next week after that we got sprayed with the OC spray. Then, you're doing your driver training as well. It's about 10 days or 2 weeks of driver training. And then that kind of culminates towards the end, and you have a bit of a sign-off exercise to say that you can be a police officer. You have your march out and off you go.
Happy days.
Yeah.
How'd you find it? Second time occurring for a recruit course? Because all the stuff you went through is obviously a lot of stuff to cover in a relatively short time.
Didn't love it. Admittedly, I probably took on a bit of a wrong attitude towards some of my peers that I thought were pretty immature. We were the first squad at that intake to finally get all our uniforms squared away so we could wear uniform. We were the first squad in uniform for that intake. And when you're in uniform in the academy, it was just the belt kit then. The load-bearing vest sort of came into play later on, not long after we left the academy. But when you're wearing your vest, there's weights in the vest to simulate the weight of a loaded magazine. There's a block in there that simulates the weight of handcuffs, and you're carrying a taser with 2 dud cartridges on it and a Glock that's bright green. It's just get used to kicking around with all this weight on. And there's people in my squad doing the Charlie's Angels pose with their green Glocks. I'm just cringing and what are you doing? That's not what that's for, So, it's look, it is what it is. It's not unlike joining the army. It's a bit of a melting pot of society, but it's a paramilitary organisation. So they're not as hard on. They're hard on some standards and not on others. So it's a bit weird.
Yeah.
So, but look, again, kind of like university, I was there for a reason.
Yeah.
I studied. I had to learn to study again, and then even that was difficult because you'd kind of learn, a bunch of stuff. Like I said about community safety, about mental health. You have an exam on it, and then you'd have to sort of data dump that to take on the next lot of information. Have an exam. And that's how it kind of went. So by the time you graduated and you got out, it was almost like, all right, what am I doing again? Like,
You've forgotten the first
yeah,
lesson
a little bit like that.
because
It
you
was-
had 100 after it.
Yeah, but as it was, like you learn more about policing and police work in the first 6 weeks of your full-on, your full-time first-year period with your mentor anyway. And like I kind of knew that, or had the idea when we marched out that they're not just going to send me by myself to, I don't know, some violent street fight or anything like that. Like you know that you're going to go into a mentor period. And I know, you know, for the first 6 weeks, you and that mentor are going to be working every shift together. So, yeah, you do all your firsts with that guy or that person typically within your first 6 to 8 weeks. So you're doing all your first dead bodies and drug investigations or, you know, whatever. But you learn more in that first year period than you do in the 6 months that you're in the academy.
Getting the hands on, getting the hands dirty.
Oh, yeah,
and seeing
definitely.
what's really done.
Yeah, absolutely. And it starts to, the penny starts to drop then, and you can realise when you can go hands on, when you can't, and you're getting, like, even though you sort of know your powers of entry, you know your powers of arrest and that sort of stuff, it's putting them into practice and verbalising that later on through your paperwork. So, yeah, it's a very steep learning curve.
Mm.
And 6 months of the academy. Where'd you go after that for that mentorship period?
So I had my first station was an Arla station.
How do the police work? You know, military obviously get your posting. You know, you're going to be there for 2 to 3 years minimum.
Yeah.
Is QPS similar in that? Did you get given an AL and you knew you were going to stay there? Or-
No, so we were given at the time it was you were given a district. So it was the Oxley and became the Centenary district not long after. So you know your first station, you don't know your second station, and during that time you get a logbook full of competencies that you got to get ticked off. And so there is, you're just doing general duties stuff. And so the first 6 months you're just going, you're doing your logbook, you're doing your competencies, you're getting your ticks and flicks every day, but you're doing the job for real every day. And, you know, once a month or every 2 months, you're having a face-to-face with like the police education first year supervising program people to make sure that then they're making sure that you're on track and that your training officer's doing the right thing and that sort of stuff. And during your first year constable period, you're also doing rotations through different officers as well. So I did 2 rotations. I did a rotation through the Mount Omni Road Policing Command for 2 weeks, and I think I spent about 10 seconds in that office and decided that I was never going to be a traffic cop. And I just despised traffic cops. Still do. Sorry, guys. And then I did a 2-week rotation through the Inala Tactical Crime Squad and loved it. It was all proactive work. It was lots of search warrants, lots of tipping cars, like turning cars out. Like, it was very, very proactive work. It wasn't uncommon to come out of an 8-hour shift in TAC crime. You know, you might work 4 up in a car or 3 up or whatever, but between everyone, there might be like 15 or 20 arrests. And you've seized drugs and firearms and weapons and whatever else. And I was like, this is it. This is what I joined the job to do. This is where it's at. And then learnt that I can't just put a request in at the end of my first year period to go straight to TAC crime. Like, you got to do your time. You got to do time and, you know, whatever else, which is probably fair enough. So I finished my rotations and then I went to Callan Vale Station. So I finished out my first year period at Callan Vale. And then got posted to North Brisbane after completing my first year period.
And did you request that? Is that because you were living on the north side?
Yeah. So halfway through my first year period, we'd bought a house and decided to renovate it. But we were travelling from north side to south side every day for work because my then wife. So I finished the academy on like a Thursday, reported to a Nala station on Friday. I got married Sunday and just went from there. Like, so there's no honeymoon or nothing like that. So we'd bought a house and yeah, we were both, my wife and I were working on the south side and just deciding that sucked. So when the posting preferences come in, I chucked in for a heap of stations on the north side of Brisbane and ended up getting one.
Yeah, nice. From there, what you said you had to do a bit of time before you could go to tack crime. Did that desire to go there still exist for you?
Yeah, look, so if I can just backtrack a little bit, I like that shitty attitude that wouldn't have done well at selection. Still wanting to be some sort of specialist sort of role. I learnt what CERT was in the Queensland Police. It was like our version of SWAT, basically. And I was like, all right, cool, I'll do that. So kept my fitness up and was training, and I couldn't do it in my first year period. And so I said, all right, and knowing that like the Commonwealth Games were coming in 2018, I think it was, Com Games on the Gold Coast.
I think so.
You know, they were starting, the word was sort of starting to get around that the teams are starting to be built. They were starting to build out the CERT teams for this response for Com Games. I was like, okay, cool. I'll keep myself fit and active and everything like that, with the intent to chuck in for selection for CERT in I think it was early 2016 was the one I'd sort of tagged to chuck in for. But in September of 2015, my eldest was born, and the moment I held her, I did not care about CERT selection anymore. I was just like, I don't need that in my life. I just don't. But there was like a bit of a void there. I was like, well, what am I going to do now? Where I need a bit of a direction. In the next year or so, I ended up working for an operations group, and I really enjoyed that. And then a mate I worked with there ended up getting a posting in the Moreton District Tactical Crime Squad, which was based at Burpengary, which was awesome because I was living in Narangba. And so he got me up there, introduced me to the boss there, and got on really well with him. And so I built a resume over the course of 2016 and submitted it late 2016. And he rang me early 2017 and said, look, if you still want a job here, you've got it. So in 2017, I went to TAC Crime at Moreton District. Yeah, it was awesome.
With the TAC crime, what's that involve? Like,
so it's all very proactive.
Right.
It's really, really proactive. So a lot of the files that you get sent to investigate are like intel files. So Crime Stopper files, people ring up and go, look, I think, Tom next door, he's making meth because I can see X, Y, Z. So you go and chase those files up, and 9 out of 10 times you swear out a search warrant, go kick the door in, and you find in gear, you're finding, but we would find anything and everything. But we'd also do jobs with like AFP, Border Force. We did a couple of jobs with CERT where we got them in to do sort of soft target knocks and that sort of stuff, and you get to know those guys. You work really closely. We worked pretty closely with like our dog squad and that sort of stuff. Like it was all really, really proactive stuff. And the boss expected you to get anywhere between sort of 10 to 12 arrests a month. Or a roster period, which isn't hard to do.
No.
Considering our AO where we were allowed to hunt was pretty much took in all the Redcliffe Peninsula, Deception Bay, Morayfield, Caboolture, Bribey Island to Moreton Island, almost up to sort of Biwa and west out to like Kilcoy. We did jobs out of Blackbutt assisting people with stuff. Like we were out there and everywhere. We had so much autonomy to hunt. Like, and if you couldn't get those results, like you just weren't working hard enough, really. And it wasn't hard either. And we'd had the iPads that started to come in, and a lot of us had those iPads with access to the Q Prime system on it. So as you would just drive around grabbing a coffee, talking shit amongst yourselves, drivers driving, and you're sitting there on the iPad just plugging in regos around Caboolture, around Deception Bay, and you'd be ping, 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 ping. Let's intercept this one. Sure enough, you can observe empty clip seal bags. You might see a bong. You might see, a syringe packet or something like that on the floor. You reasonably suspect there's probably drugs in the car. detain them for a search. Sure enough, you're finding drugs, you're finding firearms, you're finding paraphernalia, whatever else you find. And then you get some really good results that lead on to, other operations, like the phone that you take out of their pocket, put on the roof, doesn't stop buzzing the entire time they're there. And you get them to put their thumb on the phone, and all of a sudden this is all drug messages. Like, oh shit, we're onto something here. You're saying you got to get search warrants to get, into things like that. And, it's these little traffic stops and these things where you might find a little bit of ice on someone, but he's got, I don't know, $3 or $4 grand cash in his pocket. Like, what's this for, mate? Oh, I just sold a bike. Okay, no worries. And all these messages are coming in like, oh man, can I get on for half a whatever, And so, yeah, you just start, building the picture bigger and bigger there. And all of a sudden you got yourself a little drug operation. And all of a sudden, that random traffic intercept turns into a drug operation where you're knocking over, 15, 20 houses. And you're getting, 20, 30 arrests out of that, plus whatever drugs, property you seize out of that as well.
Mm.
So I loved it. Like the proactivity of it, I absolutely loved it.
Busy times by the sounds of it.
Mate, it was. But at the same time, like mentally, I really wasn't doing well at all. I was assaulted pretty badly in 2016, and I'd called urgent, called urgent code 1 or something like that on the radio, and we got the offenders under control, and we got them to the watch house, and it was a Saturday night, and then every Saturday night in most watch houses there's an ambulance officer there to tender to the people coming in, patch them up from the pubs and that sort of stuff. And this paramedic sort of patching me up, and the district duty officer is coming in and is tearing absolute strips off me because I've called urgent code 1. He's like, I'm expecting someone to be shot or stabbed, or like he's into me. And I'm sitting there like I've still got blood coming out of my mouth and my nose and everything else. And the paramedic just like looking at me, looking at him, and he storms off. And she's like, wow, what a fuckwit. And I'm just sort of like, I just didn't know what to say. Just standing there like, I'm still bleeding. And you just torn strips of me because I called urgent code 1 in the heat of everything. Like, it was just, yeah.
So does your mind travel back to a period where you had that other incident with that other authoritarian, I guess?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But the big thing that really started to slide and led to like the place where I got to was like sleep. Like my sleep was just shit house. Like, and it doesn't help having little kids in the house as well, like babies and that sort of stuff. But they, like, my kids didn't affect my sleep really. It was all these just repeated dreams of, and a lot of it is from my experiences of policing. Like, I'm not having these dreams, these vivid flashback dreams of when Chris got blown up in 2011, or working with Matty and then him being killed in action, a couple of weeks later. I'm having these vivid dreams of picking up pieces of Pearson that's been hit by a train, or the first dead body that I went to, or the assault that I had, or it's all these other things that are compounding that is just affecting my life, and I can't shift it. Like, I can't outrun it, I can't outlift it, and it's affecting my job, it's affecting my marriage, and affecting my kids. And eventually got to the point where I wanted to tap out. Like, it eventually got to the point where it was like I'd lay in bed, like my marriage had just only just been holding together. I was basically we were basically roommates. Like, the relationship with the kids wasn't there, and like when you get in such a shitty place mentally, especially when you're sleep deprived, if you got like really bad insomnia, that's when you can get things like auditory hallucinations and this sort of stuff. The stories that your brain tells yourself, it can be pretty friggin' damning and pretty damaging. So the story that I told myself was that I'm losing my house, I'm losing my wife, I'm never going to see my kids again. I can't sleep. I'm sick of feeling like this. I don't want to be here anymore. And I'd planned it all out, and like I'd done all my court paperwork and everything else. And I remember sitting in a toilet block at the station, and I'd taken all my kit off, grabbed out my service weapon, dropped the magazine out, take a single round off the magazine, opened the slide, dropped the round in, racked it forward, and I was just about to squeeze myself off, and then the thought hit me that my team's going to find me at TCS. And they were all stand-up dudes. And I was like, fuck, well, I can't do this to them. But I still didn't want to be here. So I had to come up with other plans, which I did, but I couldn't. It involved a little bit of cost. And at the time, my wife is like super good with finances and that sort of shit. She's on top of the credit card bill and that sort of stuff. And would have been questioned over things I bought and whatever else. So couldn't really carry out what I wanted to do. Until one day we're at a search warrant and we're knocking a house over, and the dealer, the intel we got was like this guy had been selling, I'm pretty sure it was ice to the local school kids. Like some grade 6s had been caught with ice, and then grade 6 kids, when you say where did you get that, they roll straight away. There's no loyalty amongst sort of grumpy kids. So we got the intel when we knocked the house over. Sure enough, we find drugs, but in the bedside table in the main bedroom, there's a stack of cash, $100 notes, and I was like, "Oh, beauty! Here we go. Here's my golden ticket." So I took a single $100 note, and after work that day, I'd again finished up all my paperwork. All the court paperwork was squared away, and in the top drawer of my desk at work, I'd had the yellow government envelopes. I'd had one of them, and in them was several envelopes in there. So I'd written a letter to both my kids, my wife, mum and dad, one to the team, and a couple to a few mates, explaining myself. And after work that day, I was going to get the means of taking myself out, and basically that was the end of it. Got home from work that afternoon though, and for whatever reason, like things were just different at home. Like my wife was happy to see me, my kids were happy to see me, which was really odd. Like I'd get home from work and I'd pick up my kids and they'd scream and push off me and whatever else. But for whatever reason, like they were happy to see Dad. And it was a real moment where I was like, what are you doing, dude? What the fuck are you doing? Look what you're about to do and look what you're leaving behind. So destroyed the means of taking myself out. Got to work the next day and went straight to the drawer, grabbed that envelope full of letters, put it through the shredder, and reached out through a veteran support service for mental health help at the same time. Fast forward about 3 months, and we got a call, or I got an email from the Crime and Corruption Commission. We need to sit down and have a suspect interview with you in relation to a matter. And it hit me like a ton of bricks about what I'd done. But what I didn't know is when I took that single $100 note was that there was a covert CCTV camera in the room that caught me doing it. And rightfully so, the guy whose house we were raiding, he reported it. And so I had my day in court with one charge of stealing as a clerk or a servant. Pled to it straight away, didn't fight it at all. Just like evidence was there and very, very clear. And I'm not, and like, it's one of those things that you get taught, especially through the military. If you're caught, you own it. But I was taught that from a young age anyway. If you're caught, own your shit, cop to it, and move on from there. The difficult part about the whole court process was the police prosecutor was pushing to have me binned for 3 years for stealing a $100 note. And the magistrate wasn't having a bar of it. Like the union solicitor I had fought really well, and it was like, this guy, a cop, wants to bin this other cop for stealing a $100 note. Like, this guy's been through all this shit, and now you want to do that. And then he also mentioned like half a dozen other sort of case law similar scenarios where other police officers have done something similar but stolen like thousands and thousands of dollars in cash. And have escaped any like proper jail time or anything like that. So yeah, so that happened in 2017, and by late 2017, I was medically retired from the Queensland Police. I'd spent by that time I'd spent a month on a mental health ward, been diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and then started the pharmaceutical ride of antidepressants, and then all the prescriptions to counter the symptoms of antidepressants. So it was it was a rough trot.
Wow.
There's a lot to sort of deal with and take on, you know, obviously court case, medical separation, and then dealing with mental ill health all at once.
Yeah.
A lot going on. How did that work? How did you move through that? Did you notice improvement? Was it?
I think a lot of it was accepting that there's parts here that are kind of broken, and you have to deal with that. I think the hardest part was probably the guilt I had for my wife, like having to deal with this. That was probably the hardest part. You had to accept that there's something not quite right, and you know it's also a lot of understanding that you've been sort of molded into a certain fashion. Like the army and I think first responders and emergency services and the training that goes into these people, I think what they're really good is, you know, reaching into your brain, flicking that fight and flight switch to fight, and then snapping the switch off and just leaving you there. So that, you know, when the bells drop, you know, there's no hesitation of, I don't think I want to run into a fire. I don't think I want to go to that violent DV. I don't think I want to advance into contact. Like they're really good at that. But when you're coming out of those things, it's really, there's no undoing that, undoing that process. And I think defence has gotten better at it now. I can't talk to what QPS do on exit of their staff, or for QFRS and that sort of stuff either. But yeah, for the most part, it was a bit sad in that, like, it's not how I wanted to leave. Like I was enjoying the job, and I didn't really have much of a direction. I thought I was going to go. I was pretty keen on going towards dive squad, knowing like I like diving anyway, and I was thinking, if I get paid to dive, that seems like a pretty cool thing to do. But for the most part, I wasn't super happy in the job, and so a lot of it was accepting like that loss of identity as well. But that was sort of the start of like unpacking and understanding and healing through. You know, obviously we can get to where I eventually got to get right, but you know, it went from, you know, a month-long stay in a mental health ward to weekly visits with a psychiatrist. Then that went to fortnightly, and then I've got a psychiatrist, and then I pick up a psychologist. And then I go through a couple of them because we just don't quite gel, you know. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. You just need to find your right people for your own care team. And then there's the whole shifting and changing of medications. You know, what I started on when I went to that first hospital in-stay, and, you know, that quickly, that dose doubled from 25 milligrams to 50 to 100, 100 to 200, and then we'll switch it to a different one. Oh, well, that does this for me. Okay, we'll give you this to counteract the symptoms of your antidepressant, and we'll change it from this to that and that to this. Like, it got to a point I was on about 7 or 8 medications a day and still feeling shit. So, and in that time, during this time, I'm still trying to sort of find direction, find what I want to do next, knowing that, you know, admittedly, DVA came to the party and I got my gold card relatively quickly, and I could sit fat, dumb and happy on a pension for the rest of my life. But I thought to myself, that's not a good example for my kids. And I need to do something else. I need like, I'm not happy just sitting at home playing PlayStation with the kids are at school. So in that time, I started a couple of businesses that didn't go so well and folded. COVID was a big killer of that, though, admittedly. So, yeah, it was about 5 years from the time I left policing to finding out about, the other thing, some of the best interventions I had during this time, because I was telling my shrink, I was like, I've still got this back pain and sleep's still a bit fucking how you going. I don't like that sleeping tablet because I'm like a zombie the next morning and I hate it, and I don't like the tablet that I have to take to counteract that effect because it keeps me up at night. And so, like, is there anything else? And she's like, yeah, I'm going to refer you to this pain specialist. So I go to this pain specialist, and he's this big guy, he's got a big belly, and he sits back in his chair with his hands on his belly, and he's like, what do you think about weed? I went, what? And he goes, cannabis, marijuana. What do you, what's your attitude on that? And I was like, look, I used to arrest people for it. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to prescribe you some of this CBD oil. So we started off on CBD oil, and that goes okay. And after 2 weeks of that, I go back to him and he's like, how you finding it? I said, oh, look, it's okay, but, sleep's still a bit how you going, and anxiety's still up there pretty high. He goes, all right, prescribes me THC oil. So 1 mil of this oil is equivalent to about 26 grams of THC, which is a fair bit. And once I think I'd overserved myself on that, and was like, whoa, man, like I was so happy. And I was just sitting on the couch watching The Big Bang Theory and eating cereal and then having the best sleep of my life. It was powerful stuff. Then I eventually got into using different sort of cannabinoid flour as well. So it's the plant that you grind up and smoke, or they, by law, I think you have to use it through a dry herb vaporizer. So yeah, then that did wonders for me. Did a lot of good, really good sleep out of it. I got a lot of relief from my joint pain and that sort of stuff out of it. My lower back pain was really great for that. But obviously, the caveat there is you're really not supposed to drive if you're on any sort of THC products, and there's no program where, like, if you're on medicinal cannabis, you must surrender your license. There's no avenue like that. But you're acknowledging when you start these medications that if you're caught, it's kind of on you, which I think is pretty shit, honestly. I mean, I know there's millions of Australians out there driving around every day with benzodiazepines in their system, opioids and whatever else that affect their driving, but there's no roadside test for that, which I think's bullshit. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, look, it was a bit of a rough road. And I was using this medicinal cannabis stuff and probably overusing it, to be really honest. And then it was sort of early 2022 that I found out about psychedelic therapy after listening to a podcast.
Right.
So the conversation was between two Navy SEALs and this fella who'd was on all these medications in the world, drinking. And he was on the brink of losing his family, and his wife had seen this ad for it, or for the charity that sponsors American veterans to go to Mexico to do this 5 days inpatient, like an inpatient, and people are getting their life back afterward. And she's shown him the ad and said to him, if you love me, you'll go. It's a hell of a thing and for a wife to tell their operator husband, go to Mexico and do drugs. If you love me, you'll do this. That's it's a hard sell, man. And even that, but he's talking about coming back from that experience, and he's got his life back. Basically, he's not angry anymore. He's not on any medication anymore. Has stopped drinking to excess, is a lot more present and just a better person. And so I was like, shit, this seems all right, might be something to this. So I start doing the research, and I think I'd mentioned it to my wife, but I think she sort of said, yeah, okay, righto, Mexico and drugs. I don't think so, buddy. But then I'd fucked up pretty bad, and I was back in front of a magistrate in August 2022. Back on a mental health ward for 3 weeks as a result. And I'd had all this information about this psychedelic therapy in Mexico, and I said to my wife, I'm going, it's not negotiable, I'm doing this. So she's like, okay, well, you think it's going to improve you and us and family and the rest of it? I'm okay with it. So a couple of weeks later, I went, and what an experience that was.
Obviously a positive experience.
Well, mate, it was the term cosmic gets sort of passed, and I know it's a weird. And I know that your audience, being emergency services and first responder, this is a hard sell.
Mm.
Yep.
Medicinal cannabis is a win, and psychedelic drugs are good for your mental health. I know this is a hard sell, to your community. I get it, but there have now been thousands of people have gone to the place that I went to and done the 2 medicines that I did, and I'll get into it in a minute. And no one has come back and said, no, that was shit. Done nothing for me. You know what I mean? So we turn up there, and so we go there. We go to a rendezvous point in San Diego, and we get driven across the border into Tijuana, and we go to this house, and there's me and 5 other Americans there. 2 guys from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, so the Black Hawk and the aviation crews from Black Hawk down, that sort of Special Forces aviation crews, so 2 of those dudes. A Navy SEAL. One guy, he was a civilian, but I'm pretty sure he was a copper. My memories escaped me a little bit there. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4. And the last guy, Dan, he was a Green Beret with 14 deployments. And this guy, he came in with full on audio hallucinations. He was hearing multiple voices. And so we all sort of settle in, and we sort of come together as a group, and we're all talking to introduce each other and why you're here and that sort of thing. And we figure out then, Trevor Miller, the guy who runs the organisation that I went to, he said, for my first Australian, introduce yourself. So I was the first Australian to go to this place to get this therapy, which I thought was pretty cool. So I introduce myself and tell them why I'm there and what I hope to get out of it. And okay, cool. And then from there, it's straight out to this other place off-site, and we do a Mexican sweat lodge. You can imagine an oversized pizza oven. We're in there, and there's drums banging and chanting and this and that. And you got to be pretty open-minded to all of this. So turn up there, and we're doing that, and you're in just a pair of shorts in this sweat lodge, and it's hot as all hell. I remember everyone gets a cloth, and there's a bucket of cold water in the center of this sweat lodge, and it's so you can dunk your cloth in there and put it over yourself. And I would wet it and put it over my head. I got big sort of goofy ears, and the tips of my ears were literally burning. It was that hot. So this cloth just sat over my head the entire time, so my ears wouldn't burn. And we're all just talking, getting to know each other. We're getting back from that, and then we get an IV because the people that look after you there, they've got doctors and nurses and paramedics that look after you while you're there. So this paramedic goes around, and everyone gets an IV that night. Go to bed. Next day, you're up, and we're doing breath work and stretching. And then you come together for a group circle after that, and we're talking about the first medicine we're going to do that night before the afternoon. So there's no lunch. You fast going into this medicine. Now, the first medicine we do is called ibogaine. Now, ibogaine is an alkaloid derived from the bark of an iboga plant. And the plant only grows in Western Africa. And over there, they use it as a coming-of-age ceremony. They get the bark, and they get young teenagers to basically chew on the bark, and it gives them this psychedelic experience. So we don't have to do that, unfortunately. Fortunately, I should say. We don't have to chew on tree bark because that would have been a freaking horrid experience, I reckon. They tell us all about the ibogaine, and ibogaine's the most powerful psychedelic drug on the planet. It just is. It's just in the ranking of things, all things psychedelics, it's up there at number one. So they give us a bit of the preparation from that, where it comes from, and how they source it. It's all ethically sourced. So they work with the local people in Gabon, in Western Africa. So make sure everything's above board. It's not just cutthroat sort of industry. All this stuff cuts from, which I really liked personally. I liked that the villagers that grow the iboga and refine it into ibogaine, that they're getting a great benefit out of this. It's a third world country, so it's really good to see that the slow progression of Western medicine is benefiting the third world. So I like that. So they prepare us for that, and they go and you get left alone for the afternoon to go and sort of collect your thoughts, and you write your intentions about what you want to get out of the medicine on a bit of paper, and time's your own for the rest of the afternoon. And the rest of the afternoon, I think we got another IV, and you're sort of just left alone to your own devices. And they've got every streaming service in the sun while you're there as well. So you're just chilling out, watching movies. The only thing they say is try not to watch anything violent. Don't want anything in your mind that's going to be sort of interacting with the medicine from a violent standpoint. So you're watching like Step Brothers, Judd Apatow movies, Anchorman, that sort of stuff. And because you're in there with other military guys, you've all watched these movies 1,000 times on deployments or, wherever, and you're quoting them, and it's just like a little bro club. But it was really cool. And then about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, they start a fire in the backyard, and you all come together, and everything's treated really, it's very revered. And these medicines are treated with a lot of respect. So Trevor, he says his piece, and it's almost like a prayer. He's like, "Thanks for coming. You're about to embark on a really, really spiritual journey for yourself, and what you get out of it is what you get out of it. And I hope it's everything you came here for, kind of thing." So you each get a moment to come forward with your intentions, and you put them in the fire. And you can say something, or you can not. And some guys, said "Oh, I hope I get out of this what I need." And some dudes had written pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. And I had a 1-page thing with 10 dot points. I didn't want to be angry anymore was my big one, rage angry. I wanted to be more present. I wanted to be not as hooked on my phone and social media. I wanted to be a better dad, a better husband, a better friend. I didn't want to go back to the medications. So, that's a really important point that I missed actually, is that before you even get there, you have to come off all your medications 5 days earlier. And that's a lot easier said than done. My antidepressant withdrawal syndrome is hard work on the body and the mind. I came off it about day 4, I think it was day 3. I was severe nausea, severe mood swings, fainting, brain snaps, all this sort of stuff. And you were withdrawing from an antidepressant. Just crazy shit, man.
Wild.
Absolutely wild. But I remember even before getting there, having a phone call with Trevor, and I'm saying, "Look, I don't know how I'm going to do this because I've got to be a dad until I leave. And I'm off my meds, and I'm this absolute prick. I can't be around my kids." And he's like, "Hang on, buddy." And then you hear him sort of flicking through notes, and he's like, "Oh, you got medicinal cannabis." He says, "You can have as much as that as you like because it's plant medicine. Plant medicine likes plant medicine." And I was like, "You sure?" He's like, "Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely." So for the next sort of 24 hours, I am absolutely blazed. I'm into that hardcore. I'm not driving anywhere. I'm just staying at home. I've got my vaporizer and 2 or 3 hits a day off my vaporizer, and I'm a happy dad and all the rest of it, sleeping really well. But man, if I didn't have that, I don't know how I would have gotten on. I would have had to go to a hotel room and just shut the door and get pizzas delivered every couple of hours to make sure I didn't die. So it was hard work, and it was hard work on my wife who watched me go through it all, and like the venom that came out of my mouth towards her when I was going through these heavy mood swings. Like, oh, geez, it was fucking bad. Yeah, I have a real empathy now for like heavy drug users coming out and having withdrawals. So, but anyway, fast forward back to the fire ceremony. So I put my intentions into the fire, said my little bit, and then one by one, Trevor comes around with a little like terracotta pot, and there's a single tablet in it, and that's your first dose of the ibogaine. Take the tablet, drink of water, no problem. And I just took it out of the bowl. Just went, yep, this is it, cool, this is why I'm here. Take the tablet. Paid no attention to what it looked like, what it smelled like, tastes like, just down the hatch. And then sort of watch everyone else do the same thing. And then Trevor says, he puts the bowl down at the end after the last person takes their first dose. And he goes, all right, now that everyone's taken the red pill, it was a capsule, and it was a red. It's a red coloured capsule. So we'd all taken the red pill. So little cheeky Matrix reference. He goes, all right, we'll see you in about an hour up in the treatment room and settle in from there. But if everyone, time's your own until then. And that was the time that, so you've got your phone while you're there, but before they go on the ibogaine, before you go in the treatment room, the last thing you do is hand your phone in, because they obviously don't want you, off your absolute head on psychedelics, Googling things or contacting people you haven't spoken to in years or whatever. So I tap out a final message to my wife, to the kids. I think I made a little video message and sent them off to listen, and I'm not going to be able to talk to you for a couple of days. I love you, blah, blah, blah. Talk to you soon. Set that off, turn the phone off in the bag. We go and sit in the treatment room. Everyone's got their own mattress. Beside each mattress is a ECG machine, and there's everyone, and for the 5 mattresses that are there, in front of them is a mirror turned around, and beside, God, this is a hard sell. Beside each mirror is a glass half full of sand with a feather in it, and next to that's a candle, and then there's a vase there with fresh flowers in it as well. And we all sit down, and there's this traditional Buidi music playing from where this iboga stuff comes from, right? Now we start to settle in. A nurse or a paramedic comes around and hooks us up to the heart rate monitor, the ECG, and then we're each given a maraca. We're all shaking this maraca to this music, and they turn the mirror around, so you're facing yourself. And for a little while, nothing is happening, and then I start seeing, like, behind me, I'm looking at the reflection in the mirror, and behind me in the reflection are like red and blue, like flashing lights. If you turn up to a place in the middle of the night and there's that red and blue, like ambiently off buildings, it looks like that, exactly like that. And like I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And I look behind me in the room and there's nothing on them. I'm like, here we go, I guess. And I'd never, apart from cannabis and the prescription meds, I'd never done anything like this before in my life. So that starts, and then a few other bits and pieces happen, and then you've got an eye mask given to you, and I just had my eye mask sort of resting on my head, and it's a thick foam eye mask, and it's got 2 holes in it, so you can open your eyes while you're wearing the mask, and the outside of the mask is a thick black plastic, so you can't see through it. So they say, like, you'll know when you're ready to lay down and just go into your journey. You'll just the medicine will tell you, kind of thing. Okay, cool, no worries. So music goes on, shaking this maraca, looking around. Some dudes are already laying down, some dudes have kept going, and me and the dude next to me, we're just like going, just shaking the maraca, I'm like, you get anything? He's like, not me, not yet. So, okay. And as time goes on, every sort of 20 minutes, Trevor brings around your next dose. I think I take about 4 pills all up. And the next thing I know, I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and the dude in the reflection is shaking his head like this, no. And I'm not moving my head. I'm just looking at myself in the mirror. And physical me, nods back, yes. The reflection, again, no. And there's this exchange back and forward between the reflections of myself and myself 4 or 5 times before we're both nodding our head yes. And the next thing I know, I see this black sludge. It looks like tar or bitumen or something like that come out my ear, land, like drip down onto my shirt and then into my lap. And I'm like, okay, I think I've seen enough. I put the mask on there and I was like, all right, I think I'm ready to lay down now. I lay down and off I go. And like and that was at about 10 o'clock at night, maybe 9:30. And then like that goes for a few hours and you're having like all these, like I basically relive my entire life, but without the emotion attached to it. It's like watching a super traumatic movie, but you're not traumatized from it because you understand that's just a movie. It's kind of like that. It's a really like an out of body reliving experience.
Yeah.
Like it's super, super introspective and, very, very intense, very intense. And about halfway through, like I'm really uncomfortable on this mattress, and I was like, oh, I gotta go to the loo. And they tell you before you settle in, like when you go to the toilet, just put your hand up or something like that. We'll come get you out and we'll help you to get to the bathroom. And I'm like, I'm 36 years old. I can take myself to the toilet. Thank you very much. Anyway, I start to sort of rouse and someone comes over and goes, oh, yeah, bathroom? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to the toilet. He goes, okay. So he unhooks me from the ECG and I go to stand up, but I'm like a baby giraffe. Like my legs are shaking. Like I can't walk properly, So he's helping me to the toilet like an 89-year-old man, puts me on the toilet so I can go to the loo and picks me up again and brings me back. And like these people are so gentle and they're so caring and they're just there for you. Anyway, mask back on, ECG back on again, and it's like off you go again. Journey straight back on. And like I'm having full on in-depth conversations with both my grandfathers who died years and years and years ago. And then, they know the names of my kids. They know where I live, even though neither of them have been there before. Like, it's unreal. Like the level of conversation I'm having with these two men that have died. 10, 15 years earlier. And then I start to sort of stir and rouse a little bit and come over again. I was like, are you okay? I said, oh, just a bit restless. He goes like, I'll take you to bed. I'll take you back to bed. Take you to your bed. Because everyone in while you're there, you get your own room, own ensuite. You want for nothing while you're here. There's chefs downstairs that make every meal's minimum 2-course meal with fresh juices and fresh smoothies and this sort of stuff made every day. Like it's amazing. And so like, I go, okay, I'll go to bed. So unhook from the ECG and I said, oh, what time is it? He goes, oh, it's 6 o'clock. Like this whole night has just gone jet fast. But you're not really asleep. You don't sleep, but you're not really awake either. It's just like your mind doing this defrag, basically, on Ibogaine. So you go to bed, and my journey just continued from there. I just put the mask back on, and I was just in bed. Just continue on this journey. More audio stuff, dealing with shit, unpacking stuff. And about 12:30 in the afternoon, I get like a bit of a tap on the shoulder. It's like, oh, lunch is on. Are you hungry? Like I've gone from, 6 hours later has just passed and it seems like minutes has passed. And I've gone, actually, yeah, I'm starving. I haven't eaten since breakfast the day before. Go downstairs and there's only sort of 2 or 3 of us that come to the table. Everyone else is like, feeling funny. I think I might just stay in bed. So the 2 or 3 of us who come down and having a chat like, how was your night last night? And he's like, dude, let me tell you. Like we're all changing stories, swapping stories. One of the boys, at the start of his journey and throughout his journey, he heard this mariachi music. And he's like, I swear there's like a mariachi band right next to me the entire time. And so I'll come back to that in a minute. So, and he's telling that, and we're all just swapping like what happened during our experiences. And then that afternoon, like we get a massage and we get some Reiki done. And that's weird to describe the whole Reiki experience. It's kind of like a massage, but like a spiritual healer as well. And like I've got 2 crook knees and she spent a lot of time, she's like, oh, there's a lot of bad energy in your knees. And I never told them that. That was never part of my in process. that I've got osteoarthritis in both my knees. But she's like, yes, I can tell there's a lot of pain in your knees. She's just like doing this weird Reiki to my knees. And I'm like, okay, cool. Have dinner and all the rest of it goes ahead just fine. And that day that you wake up, so you take the Ibogaine at night and you wake up, they call that day the grey day because that whole day you're still on this journey. Like, so my journey went from like 9:30 at the night through to 12:30 or 1 o'clock the next day. Like, it's a long time to be like on some sort of psychedelic. But you know, the rest of the afternoon, everyone's just left to your own devices. Dinner's on at 7 o'clock, and the same 3 or 4 of us came down for dinner, and everyone else is still doing their own thing, which is fine. You know, each their own. The next day, though, we get woken up when we're doing yoga. First things first. A little bit more breath work, and we come together for like a bit of a group circle, and we're all alive by then, and so we're all exchanging stories and, you know, what we thought of, what we got out of it. And there's Trevor's wife there, Brianna. She's taking notes the whole time, and she gives them, like, at the end of the whole experience, she gives you like your packet of notes. She's like, well, in case you forget, there you go. So it's really cool. So we go after that. He's like, all right, we'll have lunch, and then we'll have another circle after lunch because, you know, by this stage it's Thursday. So you get there on a Monday. Tuesday night's your Ibogaine journey. Wednesday is your grey day. Thursday is when you're doing your yoga, and then have lunch, come together for another group circle again, and they talk about 5-MeO DMT, which is the other psychedelic that we did while we're there. Now, a lot of people have heard from DMT, like dimethyltryptamine. It's a pretty popular drug. You know, it looks like a yellowish crystal, psychedelic, just whatever. The exact difference between DMT and 5-MeO DMT, I'm not sure of. I know DMT comes out of plants and that sort of stuff. 5-MeO originates from the Sonoran desert toad. Now, just like cane toads, if you make them cranky enough, they secrete a venom, right? There's white, sticky, gacky-looking crap. I don't know what this stuff looks like from the Sonoran desert toad, but if you make the Sonoran desert toad cranky or upset or excited or in fear, it secretes this venom. And someone has figured out that if you get this venom and you dry it out and then you smoke it, you have a psychedelic experience. Like, who
thought to do that
who
first?
figures that out?
What am I going to do today?
Yeah, well, that toad thing in the corner looks a bit interesting. Like, but it's wild.
I tried licking it first, didn't work. So let's try it out.
However they figured it out. Anyway, so we start learning about that, and it's like, okay, we use a synthetic version of this 5-MeO DMT, and this is what it does for you, blah, 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 blah. And the whole thing's optional. Like, even the Ibogaine was optional, but, you know, you're there for a purpose. So, and, you know, one of the Night Stalker guys was like, I don't know about all this. You know, one of the big thing that Trevor does with his integration, his preparation for 5-MeO, is he says, you know, when you're on this stuff, when it takes effect, you're going to feel lots of different things. You may feel like you want to, like your body just wants to explode. Just explode. You may feel like you want to die. Just die. And what this stuff does is like it's an ego death. Like, so people who have had near death experiences and then later like come back and done 5-MeO DMT, and it's like that was exactly like my NDE that I had when I was drowning, or, you know, whatever, when I was succumbing to heavy smoke inhalation or something like that, when I was just on that precipice of not being here anymore. That's what I felt. So that's kind of what this medicine does. So yeah, we get all this preparation, and then, you know, you consider the room that I'm sitting in. Here's me, former police officer, ex-cavalryman, and I've got a Green Beret next to me with his 14 deployments, a Navy SEAL, 2 Night Stalkers, and Trevor goes, okay, now this is who wants to go first? because this is a real quick journey. It's only going to be about 30, 40 minutes tops. Silence. Crickets. Absolutely no one speaking. And I looked around and went, really? Really? Oh, I guess the Aussie will go first, hey? So they're like, yep, absolutely. You have at it, buddy. So off I go, and we go upstairs, and treatment room set up, single mattress. You bring your pillow, and in the corner they've got like an ECG there for you. They've got defibs, they've got suction, and they've got the paramedic there and everything. So like, I was so comfortable with what I was about to do, like knowing that if anything had happened, like all these medical professionals are there, and like absolute push comes to shove, we're in Tijuana. San Diego's literally 15 minutes away to like first class Western medicine. So I'm okay with it, which is a real big selling point to my wife, to be honest. So we settle in, and Trevor gets his gear out to start getting this thing ready, and he's got like a metal sort of tube looking thing, and he goes, well, this is it. And he brings out, and it's a tiny little glass vial, and it's got a little bit of powder in the bottom of it. Like I'm talking like powder the amount to the size of maybe a grain of rice is how much is in this little glass vial. And he screws it onto this medical vaporizer, and the jet lighter comes out, and he starts heating up the glass vial. And I said, so this is just a bougie crack pipe? And he laughed and goes, kind of, yeah. So I'm like, okay. So he's explaining as right. I go, what I want you to do, he goes, while this is happening, you're going to breathe out for a count of 20, like 20 seconds. And that's a long time to breathe out, right? Oh. So 20 seconds. So you're counting down from 20. He goes, when I say go, you're going to breathe in. So breathing out, 19, 20. And he gives it me, he goes, all right, breathe in for 10. Breathe in for 10. And then he goes, all right, we're going to hold. We're going to count down from 10. So I've taken this massive draw off this vaporizer. He's put that down. Eye mask comes onto my head. He goes, we're going to count you down from 10. I get to about 7, and it feels like the tips of my toes are like fireworks. And then get to 0, eye mask comes on. He lays me back onto the pillow, and he goes, and release. Breathe out, and man, it's like fucking, I'm on the nose cone of a rocket being sent to the moon. Like, I just feel like physically, like just fuck off I go. And like, it's complete euphoria. Complete euphoria. I was seeing all these bursts of, colour, and I'm going, whoa, wow. And that happens for like a minute or two, and then I get this massive urge to throw up. So I throw up, but doesn't taste like vomit. Like it tastes like if you've had like a fistful of change in your mouth. It tastes all metallic and just tinny and like coppery and just weird like that. But I can't really move. So the staff in there see me start to like convulse, and they roll me, like safety roll me to the side, pull my head back, wipe my mouth out, allow me to vomit, clean me up, roll me back. And the eye mask is on the entire time. This journey's happening. Like, I'm not doing anything. These people are looking after me while this all happens. And man, it's super euphoric, and then it just goes black. And all I see is just this little, like this version of myself on my knees, but upright on my knees in the dark. And I just start bawling. And it's not just like, like a little kid. Little kid's probably not the best way to put it, but it's deep. Like it's coming. I'm letting go of shit. But like it's like I feel all the pain and hurt and suffering that I've put on my wife and my family and my friends and everybody I've ever sort of wronged in my life. I feel that. And then at the same time, I'm letting it all go. And I am just like this deep, heavy cry. And like this goes on for like 20 minutes, man. 20 minutes of this sort of feeling. And it goes on like this, and then like out of the blackness, I see like my kids come out one by one, and then just grab me, and then my wife, and then my mum, dad, best friend, in-laws, and it's like a dog pile, like people and people and people, and like I can feel this pressure, this physical pressure on my body as I'm laying there, and at the same time as I'm breathing, I can feel the earth, the floor rise and fall with my breath, like this, and then I just. Like I eventually sort of, it all starts to sort of fade away and whatever else. And I take my mask off and I sit up and I look over at Trevor, and Trevor, this is his whole job, this stuff. And even he's crying. And he goes, man, he goes, I've got another couple of doses here if you need it, but he goes, I don't think you need it. And I says, man,
You hang on to them,
dude, I said, I think I got everything out of what I needed right there. I think I got exactly what I came for. And that medicine working with the Ibogaine, like they just paired so well together. And like if I could have, I would have sold my right leg to be back home with my kids that night. But, you can't. And that afternoon where we had another group circle after everyone filed through and had their own experience. And some dudes are upstairs, like you could tell when they'd taken the 5-MeO and they'd start to scream. And as they go through their own journey and whatever else, and they come down and like they've been crying or they've been on like, and they come down and you sit there and like, because I was the first one down, everyone else waited upstairs. I came down, was watching Netflix. And the first dude came down, it was one of the Night Stalkers, and I got up straight away, I just gave him a massive hug. I was like, how was that, bro? He's like, oh, dude. He's like, I am so glad I came here. He goes, I am so glad I did this. I'm so glad. He goes, he's like, I fucking love you, man. And I don't know this dude 4 days. And he's like, I'm so glad you're here with me. And I'm so glad Jace is here with me. And Dan's here. And I'm so grateful for Trevor and like everyone that comes down, everyone gets a massive hug. And we're all sort of debriefing with each other and whatever else. And anyway, once we're all done, Trevor goes, are we all done? Like, does anyone else want I got some more doses left. And we're like, no, sir, thank you. We are very good, thank you. And he goes, okay, cool. Well, Taco Thursday, let's go. Anyway, that night, so do you remember I said that one of the fellas heard the mariachi music? So he'd gone to bed early. He's like, dude, I'm spent. Like, I'm going to have dinner, have the tacos, we'll have a little chat. And because we're all packing up the next morning when we're all going back to our homes or whatever else the next day. And me and one of the other Night Stalkers in the Green Beret, we're staying up and just talking and catching up and just talking about our lives and deployments and this and that and whatever else. And Matt, who came with Jason, so Matt and Jason are the two Night Stalkers. They'd worked together for years. And he said, was like, hey, how's that about Jason and his mariachi band? That's crazy, man. And I was like, dude, that's nuts. And by this stage, we got our phones back. And I've had this bright idea. I said, oi, let's go up to Matt's room. We got got YouTube open and YouTube mariachi music, and like we played it on loud outside his door. And no, you motherfuckers are just fucking with. It was so fucking funny. Oh, he came that next morning. He's like, "Whose idea was that?" And Matt was like, "Him." And he just threw me straight under the bus. But no, it was awesome. And like the next day, you say your goodbyes and go back to the rendezvous, and we just sort of went about our separate ways. But I ended up spending about 2 or 3 days just by myself in San Diego just to sort of process it all. Like I kept a journal the entire time I was there. Like every day I journaled everything I went through. And if anyone wants to read that, like I've given that to anyone and everyone who's interested. But yeah, when I was walking around, I went out to Coronado, which is the island just on the coast of San Diego there. And I remember like watching this fire truck go past, and like it was just so bright, vivid red. And I got on the group chat that we were all on. I said, is anyone else like colours just are brighter? And like, yeah, I noticed that. Like I went to the gardens and like the flowers seemed super bright. And Trevor jumped in the chat and he's like, yeah, because like we've just cleaned your glass. You imagine going through life like there's a lens over your eyes. You don't know it's dirty until you clean it. Kind of like you wash your car. He's like, we've basically just cleaned your glass off for you. So you got this clean glass of life. But what these medicines do, the psychedelics do, is they interrupt your default mode network. So everyone's got you, me, fucking everyone. And it's basically how your brain operates as a result of your life, going through life. It's all these little, shortcuts and highways and that sort of stuff. So with veterans and first responders and that sort of thing, you're stuck on fight, flight. And so quite often you get into a sticky situation. You want to argue, you want to meet it with aggression and that sort of thing. You can't really do that with your wife and your kids. It's not really perfect all the time. So that makes you cranky and that sort of thing. So if your default mode network is interrupted, it's kind of like your brain's got option again. Like it's like your brain's gone through a hard defrag and it's put itself back together very gently. And now all of a sudden, you kick your toe and all of a sudden you don't someone cuts you off on your way to work or wherever, you're not violently angry at the drop of a hat. So that's what these medicines do, man. And even Stanford, which is just done in the last year, they published their findings after a massive research period. They had 70 veterans go through the same program I did. And some of these veterans had TBIs, and confirmed through MRIs. There's a black spot on the MRI where the TBI is. And then post-treatment, doing another MRI, and then all of a sudden there's no TBI there anymore.
Wow.
It's fucking crazy.
Like the regrowth of the brain tissue. That's just unheard of. And this stuff isn't just for, mentally broken veterans and former coppers. This stuff could, save thousands and thousands of lives all across the world in every society. Not just veterans, not just first responders, people with traumatic childhoods, people who are victims of rape or abuse or domestic violence survivors or car crash survivors or, professional athletes. Corey Parker, former Broncos captain, has come out and said, look, I'm pretty sure I got CTE. He says, I don't remember how I get places. I forget to do things sometimes. That used to be me. I'd get in the car and drive to Bunnings, forget why I went to Bunnings. I'd walk from my front yard to my backyard to get something and forget why I went there, what I was supposed to get. I haven't had a single incident of that since I come home from Mexico. It's been 2 years.
Wow.
It sounds incredibly powerful. So 2 years ago you did that?
Yeah, October 2022.
And since then, how has your life changed in the context of your mental health? Have you gone back onto any prescription medications? Or?
No, I've been completely prescription medication free since October 2022. I kicked them to go to Mexico, and I haven't touched them since.
It's fucking amazing.
I came back and I used the cannabinoids for a little bit, but even then, very, very rare. And I've been now about 6 months. I've been off everything, absolutely everything.
That's awesome.
Absolutely everything.
So good.
And completely, from a mental standpoint, my memory's improved, incredibly improved. I don't need to write anything down. If I'm going to the shops to pick up bread, milk, eggs, I don't need to write that down anymore. I just go and get it and come home. I know where I'm going. I know where I've been. I know what I've done that day. If there's a laundry list of things I've got to achieve that day, I get them done. There's no need to write anything down anymore or check on things anymore or have notepad and pen or the notes function in my phone to write down what I'm supposed to do that day. There's no daily reminder to go off my phone to take medications. My life has just improved tenfold.
It's incredible.
Wow. And I'm guessing obviously a wife and kids get a massive benefit out of seeing you walk in the front door a changed man.
Yeah. And mate, it's kids are, raising kids, that's a contact sport. Man, it's crazy. but like so much more present and so much more like kids losing its shit, kids having a massive tantrum, meltdown, whatever in front of me. It used to be like just rage inducing and I couldn't handle it. My wife had to handle it. I can sit with that kid, any of my kids now, well, anyone's kid really, and just be like, oh, okay, you're upset. I can see you're upset. Do you want to talk to me about it, or do you want to just like, oh, okay, just need a cuddle or something? Okay, that's cool. Like I'm just there's more options. Like my brain has like not just had its fight and flight switch fixed. It's taken away just like the parts of me that used to really be in charge of, especially from an emotional standpoint. Like, you know, in cognitive behavior, CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, like talk therapies, they talk about the different modes and modalities in people. Like a lot of guys, you know, veterans, they have like a soldier mode, and quite often that dude's in charge because it makes up so much of who that person is. Like I still have that guy. He's just not in charge anymore.
Yep.
I've got this healthy version of myself that thinks critically and analytically and can do so very quickly still, but without all the violence behind it and like the anger and the rage behind it. Like it's a very, very two different people, mentally, two different people.
That's awesome. When you come back, did you have to do any follow-up work, or did you find like your habits or anything changed, or you had to change what you were doing to maintain that? Or is it just sort of you've been there, done that, come back and you're this version of you now?
So lit it from column A, lit it from column B. So I kept doing some of the things, and I still do some of the things that I learnt while I'm over there. Like I continue my breath work. I gave myself a goal coming back from Mexico to meditate every morning for 100 days, and I did that. And I still meditate every now and again. It's just not as much a daily practice now. The breath work definitely is. Do my breath work every day. The importance of sleep. A sleep routine is super important. That I get that. You know, if you're in emergency services or you work in a hospital, you're a shift worker. You know, that's difficult to maintain. I get that. But yeah, I got like a pretty strict. You know, I know where my bedtime is. But otherwise, I continue. I got right back into my physical fitness. Like physically, I'm fitter now than probably what I was when I left the army. So, yeah, I got my fitness regime. I get my sleep routine, and yeah, like there is very much an aspect of integration. So, what you get from that time in Mexico, integrating those experiences and that sort of stuff, like journaling helps heaps with that. So, if I am having a really shitty day or a shitty couple of days, I'll go back to my journal and read my journal and be like, yeah, that's right. These are the things I took away from here, and that's how I felt then, and it kind of sort of takes you back there a little bit.
That's awesome.
But, mate, it was transformative.
Wow.
It's amazing the benefits that you've described from doing it once. Which is, to me, is fucking wild because, you know, how long were you going through that roller coaster of different meds and different treatment, different modalities? You go into that once and you've just such a massive shift. Yeah. It's incredible.
Mate, and it's not, like I said, you know, these medicines can help so many people. Like heroin addicts go to the same place that I went to, and they're kicking heroin after, you know, being a heroin addict for, you know, 10, 15 years. They're kicking it overnight. Ibogaine takes away the withdrawal. So they're not going through withdrawals. Yeah. Like, and then they're coming out of Ibogaine going, I never want to touch heroin again. Like one treatment of Ibogaine.
That's nuts.
One. And all of a sudden there's no more you know, demand for heroin anymore.
That's awesome.
So leading on to that, what are you doing now?
Studying nursing. So the plan is to one day be a professional trip sitter. So, well, the Therapeutic Goods Administration here in Australia have rescheduled MDMA and psilocybin for use in therapeutic settings. So I contacted the company that runs the psychedelic assisted therapy course down in Victoria, and I said, I've done this. I want to help, my own community through these medicines. What's the best way to do it? And they said, well, we're going to be screaming for nurses, registered nurses. And I went, okay, cool. I'll go become a registered nurse. So applied to uni, chucked in, and been doing it ever since. And I'm about halfway through now.
How good. Well, I imagine that wouldn't have been achievable or attainable
No.
before.
No, absolutely not. My memory and my concentration, just focus, not there. Drive, not there.
I'm going to say, like, this short 2.5, 3 hours that we've spoken to you, the feeling I got, your life was so high-paced.
Oh, yeah.
And, leave the army, police force, and there was never that time for you to sit back and reflect a bit, and it was always...
Yeah.
But now, obviously, with all that treatment and what you've done is, yeah.
Mate, it's
Rewired.
been like doing like 30 years of therapy in 5 days.
Wow.
Like, and I used to go to my shrink and my psychologist, and I'd done all these other modalities, equine therapy and other bits and pieces. And every time you do something, you sort of shift the needle like a millimeter.
Yep.
Whereas going to Mexico for 5 days was like taking the needle away and fucking throwing it down the road. Like, tell you, man, like the amount of good I got out of that, just 5 days.
Yeah, wow.
It's awesome.
It's certainly a place for it by the sounds.
Hopefully we can see a bit of a shift in in the availability of it. And
Well, Monash University is doing trials right now with the 5-MeO DMT.
Yep.
So that's really positive, I think, and really, really positive for the future. And there's trials happening, I believe, in New Zealand with Ibogaine. So who knows?
Yep.
But we've got a good start here in Australia with the first Western culture to authorise and legalise MDMA and psilocybin for use in therapeutic settings.
awesome.
So,
Watch this space.
Yeah.
mate, it's a very bright horizon and a really good future for the treatment of mental illness in the Australian community, where this is our starting point.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
Too good.
Well,
I think we might wrap it up.
Sounds good, man.
yeah, thanks, mate, for your time and
No,
sharing
absolutely.
your story. I mean, again, a lot of people are going to benefit from hearing your story and, thanks for your sacrifice and what you did for the country, let alone what you've done for your own
Oh,
sort
thank
of
you.
personal stuff. And, yeah,
And what you guys do, like, yeah, it can't be easy turning out every day to some of the shit you guys do, but no, the feeling is very much appreciated and returned.
pleasure.
Thanks, mate. Incredibly powerful stuff. We appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Nah, no problems at all.
Thanks again, mate.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please show your support by subscribing, liking, and rating the podcast on your listening and social media platforms. We are always looking to improve what we do. If you have feedback, suggestions for further guests, topics, or would like to be a guest yourself, please contact us via Instagram.
Stop the scene.